Thank you. Good evening, everybody. As usual, before we start the meeting, I will run through the usual process statement. So can I remind everyone present that this hybrid meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if sat in the chamber, or use the remote raise hand function. If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak by myself, please could you turn your camera on to indicate that you wish to speak or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by myself, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is switched on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. And if this isn't possible for any reason, please bring that to my attention or to the attention of an officer if you haven't already done that. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues or to get the attention of an officer if you need that for any reason. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they're addressing the committee, then they should let myself as chair or a democratic officer know. So please can I welcome all committee and non-committee elected members, co-opted representatives, cabinet members, our officers, Vale residents, public speakers, and to anyone watching the live meeting broadcast. Moving straight into the agenda, do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, we do, Chair. I've got apologies from Councillor Penn and Kirsty Mitchell, one of our tenant reps.
Thank you, Mark. I don't see any hands from anyone else. So we move on to the minutes of the previous meetings of the Place Scrutiny Committee. There are two sets of minutes for us to consider this evening, committee. The extraordinary meeting held on the 6th of January and the ordinary committee meeting which was held on the 20th of January. I'm going to take both those reports at the same time. Are members happy to approve? And if so, can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Iannucci Williams, thank you. And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hooper? Happy to second?
Yeah, happy to second, Chair.
Many thanks. Now on to declarations of interest. Are there any this evening, please? No. So before we begin the rest of the agenda, I want to ensure everybody understands the role of this committee. I'm Councillor Susan Lloyd-Selby, for those who don't know me. I chair the committee, which including myself has 13 members and non-voting co-opted representatives. The role of this scrutiny committee is to consider the information in the reports before us, to listen to all the views expressed and consider whether we agree with any proposals or recommendations, or whether we wish to make any recommendations back to Cabinet or to officers for their consideration. We don't make the final decision on any proposals. That responsibility sits with Cabinet and at times with full council. So this evening, officers will present reports. I'll then invite any Cabinet members who are in attendance to see if they wish to make any comments, followed by those members of the public who've joined us tonight to speak on the Cosmoston Park Aqua Park report. And in line with the rules for public participation, each member of the public will have up to 3 minutes to speak. I'll then invite any non-committee members who wish to speak to ask their questions or make comments. And finally, members of the committee will debate the issue before us. Once all the formal debate is concluded, I'll summarise, and if appropriate, I'll draw out any recommendations. So I hope that's clear and I hope that's helpful. So we move now to agenda item 4, review of the pilot leisure activity at Cosmoston Country Park. This report is a reference from Cabinet. Just to explain to committee members, within the body of the report, it makes reference to a report from Vale Action Group. Just to clarify, that has not been included to committee because the group has asked for it not to be shared. So that's the reason why it's not before us this evening. We're joined by Marcus Goldsworthy, the Director of Place, who has a presentation for us. Thank you, Marcus. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think Mark is going to put the presentation up to as we run through the report.
Yeah, just put it up now, Marcus, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Members, I will just run through the recommendations from the report, which is the next slide. Thank you, Mark. You will note that the recommendations are that we note the council notes the visitor uplift and related expenditure associated with the pilot activity. We note the ecological reports undertaken before, during, and after the activity. We acknowledge and note the concerns and petitions that were received. We undertake a full year ecological and water quality baseline assessment in 2026, following the independent ecological report commissioned by the council and following the advice in that report, where no new water activities will take place. And we'll bring a further report to Cabinet in late 2026 to advise on possible further activities or opportunities having regards to the outcome of those baseline surveys. Thank you, Mark. Next slide. Members will be aware that Cosmoston has previously hosted commercial paddleboarding and boating activities in the past, and it continues to host Cardiff Diving and Canoe Club on the lake, and it is intended that those will continue. They've operated for many years from the lake without any impact. The country parks are a key visitor destination for wellbeing, ecology, tourism and leisure. And as a council, we need to consider how we can support the sustainability of the country parks into the future, given ongoing budget constraints and the fact that the parks themselves are not a statutory function. The pilot allowed the assessment of a leisure activity and allowed the consideration of the balance with nature for future possible activities. Next slide, Mark, please. Members will note that we commissioned the tourism impact assessment of the activity, and that indicated that upwards of 16,000 additional visitors were drawn to the park as part of the leisure activity, and that brought a total combined economic impact of nearly £960,000 to the Vale of Glamorgan. The water quality and safety were tested during the time, both before and during the aquapark's activities, and subject bar from one isolated anomaly where the testing was not done in the appropriate location, all testing samples were within acceptable levels. In terms of ecological impact, Natural Resources Wales were consulted, and we obtained an assent from them to actually install the aquapark, and then subsequently we've obtained a further consent from them to not remove the concrete anchors that were placed in the lake to anchor the aquapark there. We have had multiple ecological reports undertaken on behalf of the operator of the aquapark, and the council commissioned a separate ecological report following the finishing of the aquapark in the autumn of last year. We have received significant community response, both in the form of petitions, objections, and of course, as mentioned by the chair, a full report from the Vale Action Group. Next slide, please, Mark. In terms of water quality and safety, sampling took place in the approximate location of the aquapark and was undertaken well in advance of the aquapark being stationed there, and undertaken by the council every 2 weeks, but by the company every 3 to 5 days while they were there and before they actually erected their equipment. There was also further testing done when we experienced heavy rainfall. The samples that were tested for E. coli and enterococci. In addition to this, there was a full risk assessment prepared by the company, which was ultimately agreed by the council. And while there were a very small number of injuries, these were not. They were a very low number, and they were typical for the type of activity taking place. And none of the injuries or outcomes were linked to water quality. Next slide, please. In terms of ecology and environment, the status of the park as a site of special scientific interest required what's known as Natural Resources Wales Assent under Section 28 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act. This was granted prior to any operations being undertaken in the park. And as I said, a second assent has been granted to not remove the concrete stanchions which replaced the concrete anchors which replaced in the lake itself. During the course of the operation, the operators undertook specific ecological surveys. These were undertaken before they started and during the activity taking place. And when the activity finished, an independent ecological review was commissioned by the council. This recommended that we undertake a full year's assessment of breeding birds as a long-term monitoring strategy in 2026 with no activity there. It is clear that they haven't said that the activity cannot take place, but that rather that we need to establish a baseline against which any further activity can be considered. We've also in 2025, continued checks for invasive species in the lake. We've been aware as a council of zebra mussels in the lake for in excess of 20 years. They were undoubtedly brought there by bird life, dropping animals from Cardiff Bay into the lake. And there is no way of clearing them out of there now. During the summer, there was an indication that the so-called killer shrimps had been introduced to the lake, and there was testing undertaken which showed possible DNA for these animals. We undertook further tests in the autumn, which were actually showed a negative, but were not conclusive. We've also continued to manually test through with rangers checking the water, and we have still found no evidence of killer shrimps in the lake. Although we are continuing to test, and the new set of tests are due to be undertaken in April of the water. Next slide, please, Mark. In terms of community response, there was obviously considerable concerns. There was a 7,585 signature petition submitted prior to the park's opening. A large amount of the concerns were around the ecology of the park, possible noise, the water quality, and the safety of the operation. However, I would say that this was a pilot operation, and the information we've gained during the pilot operation happening has been invaluable in us preparing for any future strategy for long-term uses in Cosmiston to support its sustainability as a country park. Next slide, please. The next steps are that we are pausing any extension of any new water-based activities for 2026, while a full ecological and water quality surveys are undertaken. We are going to be later in the year, once those surveys are started to report back, going to undertake a wider review and of opportunities in the country parks to help facilitate their long-term future and sustainability. And we will be bringing a report back to Cabinet at the end of 2026 regarding a programme for possibly developing suitable opportunities in the parks going forward. That report undoubtedly will come back to the Place Scrutiny Committee as well. Next slide, please, Mark. As members will be aware, 8 representations were made to in relation to this report to Scrutiny. And what I shall do very quickly is just run through some of the issues that were raised in those 8 letters, 7 of which objected to the use and 1 of which supported the operation of the aquapark. So, as I've previously mentioned, in terms of invasive species, there has been some suggestion that the aquapark brought these invasive species to the lake. As I've said, zebra mussels have been present in the lake for at least 20 years and probably brought to the lake by bird life. In terms of the possible killer shrimp present in the lake, this sample was first taken in the summer, we believe late July, early August, which possibly indicated the DNA sample. That has yet to be confirmed, both in terms of physically finding any of the animals, but also in terms of the DNA sampling that's been undertaken since. And it's important to note that it's almost impossible that the aquapark could have brought those species to the lake, and for the DNA to be present, for testing to have shown it up in the timescales we're talking about. So if they are in the lake, they've been there for some time, and they certainly weren't related to the aquapark coming. In terms of swimming safety and use of the water, as I've said earlier, the Eastern Lake has been used for leisure uses for many years in the past, including for swimming. It's been used by the diving club and also for windsurfing and canoe clubs over the years. Previously, swimming was undertaken in the lake, but this was stopped due to safety issues, as there is no lifeguard. It was not stopped because there are any concerns about water quality or pollution. Next slide, please, Mark. In terms of NRW and the ecology response to activity, as I've stated, NRW granted assent for the use and indeed for the retention of the concrete anchors in the lake. The operator employed a local ecologist before, during and after the activity. We employed a separate ecologist to consider that work, and we have acted on the recommendations of that ecologist. It's important to note that the reason for the Site of Special Scientific Interest designation is the presence of starry stonewort, a plant in the lake. This was mainly located in the Western Lake, but it has actually now spread to the Eastern Lake and is located relatively close to where the location of the aquapark was. It doesn't seem to have been affected at all by the operation of the aquapark. In the current year of establishing a new baseline, there will be no new activities on the water, and this will allow us to consider how that impacts the lake itself and what the impact on ecology and the water around the park is. Next slide, please, Mark. In terms of visual and general impact on the water park and Cosmoston, part of the review undertaken by the council was to consult with park ranger staff to assess their views of the impact on the aquapark, and it was confirmed that there was limited noise complaints that were received, but these were not substantiated. There was no overall increase in unauthorised use of the water. This was suggested that it might happen. There was no increase in general antisocial behaviour above and beyond what we expect of any normal year, and there were no increase in parking or traffic issues above and beyond what we expect during any busy periods in the park. Next slide, please, Mark. Other issues raised in terms of those representations are the need for planning or other consents. Planning permission was not deemed to be required for the activity on the water or for the temporary equipment and containers associated with it due to their temporary nature, and the development rights that are associated with the council and its agents. The containers themselves were located on site for longer than we would have liked. This was largely down to the very poor winter that we've had, and we did not want the park itself to be damaged with heavy vehicles removing those containers. They are in the process of being removed this week, and we expect them to be gone certainly by next week. And lastly, the concrete anchors in the lake are the only things that are left now. They were deemed to be less intrusive, and consent has been granted by NRW for their retention. Next slide, please, Mark. In terms of the financial background to the pilot, this question has been asked. All income received from the pilot activity and any increase in parking income has been used by the country parks themselves to improve facilities within them and to directly support important ecology work within both of the parks. All income for concessions, parking and other activities in the park is retained within the countryside section and is used to support the parks themselves, including, as you'll probably be aware, installing new toilets and refurbishing existing toilets and obviously improving the parking facilities that are there this year. Next slide, please, Mark. Finally, in terms of water quality and testing, as set out in the presentation, water testing started twice a month from January. Sorry, this is in terms of this year, I should say. Water quality testing has started twice a month from the end of January and will increase to once a week from April through to the end of September. Testing is being undertaken by rangers and the actual water is tested by Public Health Wales. In previous years and prior to 2025, testing was undertaken monthly and twice a month in the summer. Previously, testing was undertaken at the water's edge, which, given the large bird populations and also obviously mammals located within the park, as well as extensive dog walking and horse riding, could lead to occasional anomalies with very strange readings coming back. So that is why we are now taking all of our readings away from the edge of the lake, and they're actually taken off a small boat. And it's in the approximate location of the former water park. And this standardised approach will be continued this year during the baseline assessment period. And that's it, Chair. Thank you very much. That's the report.
Thank you very much, Marcus. I believe we have the responsible Cabinet member, Councillor Bronwyn Brooks, who's joined us tonight at committee. Councillor Brooks, are you there, and is there anything that you'd like to add? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee, as well. I don't want to go over the same sort of facts and figures as Marcus has gone over, because I think we're just going to end up repeating that same ground. And I know there's lots of people who want to speak and for their views as well. But I think it's just really worth adding in that how important our blue and green spaces are to everybody. And I think this is particularly, well, vitally important following the pandemic, when so many people were stuck indoors and our outdoor spaces literally became a refuge for people. However, the knock-on of that as well is how many people have become isolated following the pandemic. So I think for us to encourage people to actually use our green and blue spaces is incredibly important. And it's about us protecting them, as well as making sure that they're sustainable for sort of our future generations, or for our young people who are coming through as well. And income generation plays a really important part in that. You know, we've heard about that there was income made from that, the pilot, you know, and that was only over 10 weeks, which has actually been ploughed back into there. And I mean, I think everybody will agree that the input that we've had in our country parks over the last few years in particular are really borne fruit, and our parks are looking, I think, quite incredible. I was up Port Kelly today, yeah, and at the new sort of toilets and the opening of that, or official opening. And all of these facilities, as well as all our ecological, all our ecological work that we're doing, and around rewilding, supporting local business, and supporting our visitors as well. I mean, of the number of visitors, I think about 78% of them were actually people from outside the area, many of whom will probably have come along to our parks for the very first time. And I think that's really important as well. It invites people in, they use other facilities there, and I think that's incredibly important for us as well. And I think taking this year's break now to evaluate properly, excuse me, I've had a really bad chest. Do beg your pardon. Is that taken into account then that habitats do change, as they've changed over the years, and that's nature. That is nature, and that's how they evolve. And I think paragraph 2.29 lays out what needs to be considered in that. Right, I'm really sorry, Chair. I'll have to come and get a drink, I'm afraid.
Please don't worry, Councillor. Thank you very much for joining us, and do come back in if there's anything that you want to add at any point. I appreciate the fact that you're recovering from an illness. Okay, so can I now move on to members of the public who've registered to speak with us, please? And I believe, are we starting with Mr. Robson? Yeah. Mr. Stephen Robson, I think you're joining us online. Welcome to committee. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. We're really interested to hear what you've got to say. You've got 3 minutes to speak. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this evening, I'll address the water quality at Cosmeston because we have serious concerns about public safety. So first, to set the context, it's really important to understand what water quality actually is. And it's largely about protecting bathers from dangerous pollution spikes. These usually happen in a water body due to external events. So things like a first flush following heavy rain, which was mentioned by Marcus Goldsworthy. So when you have a first flush, contaminants will wash into the lake. You also get pollution spills and maybe leaching from adjacent landfill sites. The thing is, these are very difficult to predict. So every time someone enters the water, there's always a risk one of these pollution events will be happening. And the best way to assess the risk is by looking at the historic E. coli and enterococci sampling, because this tells you whether there's an historic pattern of producing these dangerous spikes. And this is something that wasn't mentioned by the council. They just focused on the current samples, which is a mistake. Now, if it does produce these dangerous spikes from the historic samples, it's something you need to be very, very careful with. So can you see where this is going? So we requested through FOI the historic water quality samples, and I'll report what we found. In July 2024, a sample of 16,000 was recorded on the East Lake of Cosmeston. This is 16 times the safe limit for E. coli. In May 2025, an enterococci sample of 2.5 times the safe limit was recorded on the shoreline of East Lake. Now, by the way, this is where users enter the water to swim over to the aquapark. This sample was not reported by Aquapark. They decided to keep it to themselves. And that's something that wasn't mentioned by Marcus Goldsworthy. Around the August bank holiday, an E. coli sample almost double the safe limit was recorded on the East Lake. And this was during the operation of the aquapark. Doesn't matter if that sample came from a different part of the lake. Fecal pollution on a lake spreads. Since 2017, 25 samples have exceeded safe limits for enterococci or E. coli. This is the definition of poor water quality. You don't have to take my word for it. NRW and SRS told the council that the water quality at Cosmeston is poor. This means by legal standards, if Cosmeston was an official bathing water, it would be closed down. Now, the council might say that extra samples were being taken, but this does not help. Water quality samples take 3 days to process. So by the time you get the result, the exposure has already happened. So there's a massive flaw in the policy. So in conclusion, the point I make today is that water quality at Cosmeston is not compatible with a children's aquapark. This is something we know right now. And that's because the historic pattern shows that dangerous spikes happen too often. And when they do, they're impossible to mitigate. 1 more year of samples does not change the history of the lake. Inevitably, a large number of people will be exposed at some point if water activities are allowed to continue and if the aquapark comes back. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robson. I'm going to ask committee members, is there anything that you want to clarify with Mr. Robson before we move on to the next speaker? No. Councillor Ian Perry, please. Just a point of clarification.
Yeah, that's right. You mentioned some figures, almost E. coli 16 times the limit, and then another bacteria, which I forget what it was 2.5 times over the safe limit, which was by the bank. How did you find out that figure? Because that wasn't mentioned to us earlier.
Yeah, so that sample was not reported by Aquapark. So that sample came from May 2025, and this was during the due diligence phase when they were taking water quality samples, and they wanted all those samples to be excellent. The reason we got them is because we put a Freedom of Information request into Public Health Wales. We had to go through the Information Commissioner to get hold of those samples in the end. It took about 6 months. They tried to withhold them, but we got them in the end. And it came at quite a sensitive time because I believe if that sample was reported, I don't think the aqua park would have gone ahead.
Cool.
Okay,
And,
thank you very much for that
can I ask one more
clarification.
question quickly?
Yeah, we're not taking questions, Councillor, of
Yeah,
the
it's not a
speaker.
question,
If it's a
clarification.
hang on.
Yeah,
If it's a clarification, please go ahead.
Yeah, so you mentioned additional water sampling, and did that make you happy that they're going to have a look at more sampling, or would you still be in the same position?
No,
where...
I'm sorry, I'm not going to allow that, Councillor. That's not a point of clarification. That's the question.
It is an important
but I'm not going to allow
question.
that. I'm sorry. We're under the terms of the way the Scrutiny Committee operates. We're not able to
really
question
important.
speakers. It's the clarification. Okay. So we're going to leave that there.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I only heard part of it, you see, so I didn't quite understand what was being said. It would take me 2 minutes just to answer. Or 2 seconds
you asked whether or not Mr. Robson was happy with the response. That's not a point of clarification. I'm going to move on, Councillor. Thank you. I'm going to move on. If you have no other points of clarification, I'm going to move on. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Robson. We very much appreciate your contribution. And now we're going to move on to the next public speaker, Miss Sarah Lennox. Welcome, Ms. Lennox. Mr. Robson, if you'd like to, yeah, thank you very much. Lovely. Thank you very much. Welcome, Ms. Lennox. Welcome to committee. We're very interested to hear what you've got to say, and you've got 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. No damage to wildlife. That's what was so confidently stated at the start of the pilot, and that is the message that the Council so desperately is trying to force on the public, even after the pilot review. So I assume that's exactly why you commissioned Thomson Ecology, to independently verify your claim, but when you actually read that report, it does no such thing, because it's simply not true. In fact, it says the opposite, because Thomson Ecology state that they cannot confidently say that concerns regarding biodiversity and legislative compliance have been adequately addressed. That is not validation or reassurance, it is a failure to demonstrate compliance. And it gets worse because the ecology evidence you relied on isn't robust to begin with. NRW consultation feedback in July was clear. The surveys missed the peak breeding season. There was no direct measurement of disturbance, and that this limits the robustness of the conclusions. So your own evidence base is telling you clearly that it is incomplete and not capable of properly assessing impact. And yet, despite that, the Council has presented that the risk has been ruled out time and time again. But it hasn't even been properly measured. Now, here's the part that's the hardest to ignore. In October 2025, the Vale Action Group submitted a detailed evidence-based report to the Council. It was an opinion or speculation. It was built on months of research, FOI data, consultation, and scientific input. It raised clear concerns about the protected species like the Chetty's warbler, lack of baseline ecology data, lack of planning permission, failure to properly assess water voles or bats, risks to a SSSI site, and serious issues with survey methodology. And what happened to the evidence? It was dismissed. So let's be absolutely clear about the position that we are in right now. The Vale Action Group raised concerns, Natural Resources Wales raised concerns, and your own independent review confirms those concerns remain unresolved. So I will ask this directly. Why was the Vale Action Group's evidence dismissed when it so clearly aligns with the findings of Thomson Ecology? And why even now are you presenting this as though the ecology is settled? Because this is no longer about ecology. This is about how evidence is handled and how the public is treated when they present the evidence. And the situation is made even more concerning by the lack of oversight. There is no dedicated wildlife police officer, making it extremely difficult for the public to report potential wildlife crime. And there is no visible role of a council ecologist critically challenging or scrutinizing this work. At a site with protected species and a SSSI status, that is not just surprising, it is unacceptable. So what we are left with is this. You had incomplete data. You were told about the limitations. You were presented with independent concerns repeatedly. And instead of reflecting that uncertainty honestly in your review of the pilot, you have presented it as certainty. That is not robust scrutiny. That is not balanced decision-making, and it is certainly not the standard that public should expect. This scrutiny meeting should reject the Cabinet's report, and in particular, Resolution 1B. So I will finish with this. If your own independent review cannot confirm compliance, if your own evidence base admits it's limited, and if community evidence raising the same concerns has been dismissed, on what basis are you still claiming no damage to wildlife? Because at this point, this is not just an ecological issue. This is a question of credibility and a question of accountability.
Thank you very much. And again, I'll ask whether or not there are any points of clarification that committee members want to raise. Councillor Perry, is that an historic hand, or do you have a point of clarification?
It is a new hand, yes. So
Go ahead.
We've got, yeah. So is it SAR? SAR says that things are being raised with the Pwyllgor Council. I just want to know how those were raised, because that wasn't clear in what you said, whether you went through the official complaints procedure through elected members, or how did you raise these matters with the council?
So we contacted the council directly. We sent out various emails. We asked open questions. We send out invitations for Q&As or campaigning, or we tried to reach out multiple times to share our views, but we often were dismissed. Our concerns were dismissed, our emails were unanswered, or there was we will get back to you, and then there wasn't never really a follow-up on that.
Thank you very much for providing that clarification. Thank you. You can switch your camera off now. Thank you very much. Marcus, do you want to respond to the points that have been raised by the public speakers? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if I may. And first, if I'll start with Sarah's comments, please, which I'm afraid I have to completely dispute. There have been in the order of, I think we've counted up about 2,000 emails received by the council in respect of the water park. A large number were from the group which is part of the Vale Action Group. Every single email received a response. In many cases, a very detailed and long response. There have been numerous complaints to the council which have also received responses. The Vale Action Group report, which Sarah has referred to, was fully considered by Thompson's as part of their assessment process. But on top of that, we did intend to allow members to consider that report, but unfortunately the group itself refused to allow the report to be presented. So I just wanted to make that point really clear as we start, that this is not quite as presented in that public presentation there. Moving on, I just think it's really important in some of the other comments that were said around Natural Resources Wales. We followed the advice of both Natural Resources Wales and the council's own ecologist to the letter of the law in all cases. Thompson's Ecology have also looked at the information that was submitted, and they have made recommendations. Their recommendations are that they can't, there is no evidence of any damage to any species or any ecological damage, but they recommend that we carry out a baseline assessment for 2026 to ensure that we have the information that would allow us to make that assessment going forward. That is what we're doing. We're following their advice implicitly. We're following all the guidance that they gave. There has been a suggestion by one of the speakers that we deliberately ignored Natural Resources Wales advice, which is completely untrue. If Natural Resources Wales, if we had ignored Natural Resources Wales advice, then of course we probably wouldn't have obtained an assent twice, not once but twice. And I think it is just really important to stress that there was a reference to the council's own ecologist not being present. The council's ecologist is part of the countryside team which manages the park. So the council's ecologist will be part of any decision that's taken in respect of any undertaking in the park and any facilities that are provided. So I think I just wanted to clarify that in terms of that speaker's comments. Then moving on to Mr. Robson's comments, who dealt specifically with water quality. I think there is a misunderstanding in some of the groups who obtained information about water testing, around how that water testing was undertaken. for whatever reason, rangers have only been testing at the edge of the lake now for a considerable period of time. That testing is undertaken, or was undertaken, I should say, in the reed bed as you will walk away from the launching ramp. Unfortunately, we did obtain, there were a number of spikes in the historic testing. They were at various times, they were really anomalous. The spikes themselves were almost certainly caused by either animals such as birds or indeed dogs fouling the water, because we're pretty certain that that can happen on occasion. It's why we put in place a more robust testing regime actually in the water, so we could assess what the quality of the water itself. And the other thing to say at this point is, Mr. Robson talked about bathing water. We are not testing Cosmeston as bathing water. It is not following, so we're not undertaking the tests that would be required for a bathing water assessment. What we have put in place is a testing regime which has, in the case of the location of the aquapark, or approximately the location of the aquapark, has shown no breaches of the water standards. The one breach that was referred to that occurred in May was a test that was undertaken by the company itself. It was undertaken in extremely windy conditions in the wrong location and at the side of the lake, because no boat was present for them to undertake the test. We were, as a council, not made aware of that test. However, the company itself has dismissed it as not admissible because it was not taken in accordance with the requirements of the testing regime. So that is why they didn't disclose it to us. It is a shame they didn't disclose it to us, but that information was obtained from Public Health Wales via a Freedom of Information request. We were not aware of it as a council. In terms of the other test, which showed elevated levels, which was undertaken in August, that was from the beach area on the opposite side of the lake. And unfortunately, as everyone is aware, that beach area is used without any regulation by sometimes for people to enter the lake and to swim. Rangers do their best to protect, to stop that happening and to obviously ensure that it isn't, but it does happen. And we have had cases of things being tipped into the water, but also it isn't an area where we would normally, certainly an area that's not very close to where the aquapark's taking place. Mr. Robson said if there's elevated levels anywhere in the lake, that should indicate it could be anywhere. I think what we've done throughout the summer is test that location where the water park was, and it has shown no elevated levels. The other thing which I just think is really important is that obviously Mr. Robson refers to the danger to users of the water and the fact that that could lead to other issues in terms of people getting sick. As you'll know, the water itself has been used for many, many years by a number of different clubs, by the canoe club, by the diving club. The diving club obviously are in the water. They are ingesting water constantly. We've not received any indications of any illness or sickness related to that. Prior to those operations, there was a paddleboarding operation and a boating operation where people did go in the water. So to suggest that the water has not been used and that it's polluted is just not true. We are, as we've said, trying to make sure that the regime that is in place now is a very robust regime, is undertaking the testing in the away from the side of the lake where there is the potential for contamination to actually occur, and to ensure that what we're getting is a true reading in respect of the water quality. And that is important as well, because there was also reference to Natural Resources Wales and SRS being unhappy with that testing. That is not true. We followed a risk-based assessment to ensure that didn't happen. That was why additional testing was undertaken when heavy rainfall occurred, to ensure that there was no spike caused by runoff into the lake. One final point is really, this is really important, is the lake itself doesn't have any river or stream entry, so you do not have the position where sometimes stormwater coming down a river can lead to pollution incidents. That doesn't happen. So, but we still carried out the testing associated with heavy rainfall. So I think I've answered all the queries that were raised there by the members of the public. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Marcus. And before I bring in non-committee members, I'm just going to see if the Cabinet member had anything that she wanted to add. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies for before. As I said, I've had this cough and then it just catches me. I mean, I just wanted to add on that this testing, which has actually started, we are now within that year of testing, is to make sure that we can make an informed decision on a longer term strategy. Obviously, this was a pilot. It was always going to be a pilot, despite there being various activities held there before over the years. My husband himself was a canoe instructor there many years ago as well. It's been used a lot over the years. So I suppose it's just about making sure that whatever testing we do, whatever results we come up with, and nothing is on the table and nothing is off the table at this point in time. I think it's really important that we keep that open mind, because what I want to do is make sure that people come to our parks, they use them, everybody's welcome, all our numerous dog walkers, you go there, and I mean, to be perfectly blunt, you've got dogs trampling all over the place. And I mean, but it's a wonderful place for them to explore, isn't it? And to sniff out to their heart's content. As well as children and families, and as well as then our local habitats, our rewilding, our wildlife, all of that is a mix in, which makes that park, that country park, so sustainable. And that is what we need to try and develop, and to make sure that we can carry on doing all those projects and to sort of enhance our rewilding, enhance our open spaces. So it's about asking members really not to dismiss what we're trying to achieve here. It's been talked about possibilities for the park for quite a few years now. In fact, it's been mooted quite a number of years ago. So this is about making our informed assessment so that we can make an informed decision, and nothing's off the table, nothing's on the table. It's about what can we do to protect our country parks, as well as welcome visitors, locals, and everybody who uses our fantastic, wonderful park. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And thank you, everybody, for your patience. I'm going to ask if there are any non-committee members that want to come in at this point. Councillor Franks, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start by thanking the speakers who obviously gave very passionate and also scientific comments. And I'd also like to thank Bronwyn Brooks for her contribution, struggling through her bad cough. Now, it seems to me that the Cabinet should recognise the huge opposition to aquasports. Cabinet should cut its losses and acknowledge that so many do not want this intrusion into the country park. Now, there was a comment about £960,000 coming to the Vale because of this project. Is that sum for the whole of the Vale, or just the extra income for the Vale Council? I think dragging out this saga will not be sensible and will not reflect well on the Cabinet. There's no merit in continuing to pursue the option of such activities in Cosmeston, and I would suggest that committee might well recommend to Cabinet that the aquapark scheme be permanently dropped. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And Marcus, could I ask you just to address that issue of the income, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that was a figure that was attributed to the whole of the Vale via the tourism and economic development consultants that were commissioned to review the operation afterwards. I can't disclose the figure we received as a council, but it was a figure which was just ploughed straight back into the country park.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Any other non-committee members wanting to speak on this issue?
Chair, could I have a little follow-up?
You may, Councillor. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. It seems it's a little bit misleading to give this global figure. And I am also most concerned that the public are not aware of how much extra additional income the Vale Council has received. Now, I'm pretty sure councillors have asked this question, but it's shrouded in secrecy, which I think is very disappointing. Thank you, Chair.
Can I have a point of order?
Yes,
Chair?
you can, Councillor Hooper.
Just regarding Marcus's point that he cannot share it, he could share it as part 2. I think it's important that this committee understands the actual figures involved rather than us being kept in the dark as well. So can I suggest that we find space to deal with that here so we can deal with the conversation in the round? Thank you, Chair.
Marcus, do you have a view on that, or do I need to seek advice?
I believe it will be a commercial issue of commercial sensitivity with the company itself, and they will refuse to allow it to be disclosed. So I think, I mean, we can obtain some advice on that, but that is certainly the reason why we were unable to disclose it. Just to add, Chair, I don't believe that the issue of the £96,000, which has been presented as a global figure for the Vale, is an insignificant sum. I don't think it's misleading in any way. It's just the figure that's attributed to the wider economic benefit of the aquapark.
Thank you for
Sorry,
the
Chair,
response. Do you want to come back in on that point of order, Councillor Hooper?
Yeah, so all councillors sign a code of conduct requiring us to maintain, recognise that there's some things that need to be kept out of the public domain, which is the reason we have part 2. So can I suggest that this is taken as a part 2 item, and for Marcus to suggest that this is something that only certain councillors can get to find out about and others is frankly absurd. Thank you.
I didn't hear the officer say only certain councillors could get to find out about it. What I think I heard, and I'd like you to clarify it, Marcus, is that you consider this as a commercially sensitive issue, and therefore we're not in a position where we can share that at this point.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that is completely correct. It is an issue of commercial sensitivity associated with the business that was actually running the aquapark.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hooper, I think that leaves us in a position where we're not going to take it. I'm not going to take it as a part 2 item.
Can I ask for some advice on that?
Can I finish speaking? Can I finish speaking? Thank you. If you let me finish speaking, what I was going to say was that we're not in a position where we can take that as a part 2 item in this committee tonight. If you're not,
you can give advice on that?
Councillor, please don't speak over me when I'm speaking. You know that we don't do that in committee. When anyone's speaking, we let them finish, and particularly when the chair is speaking. I don't think we're in a position to get advice on that this evening, because if the view is that we would have to consult with the aquapark organisation itself, then clearly that has to be done in an appropriate way. What I will say as committee chair is that we can take it outside of this committee. We can take that advice, we can bring it back to committee, and if we are able to take it as a part 2 item, then I will make sure that that is included in the agenda subsequently. But I think that's where we are this evening, Councillor.
I want to put on record, I disagree with that decision, Chair, because that goes against the things that we sign up to as all councillors in terms of being able to see it. And we should be able to have that advice at this committee, particularly as we knew that this was a contentious issue this evening. So I find that really difficult, because you can wade through all of this. We've got no idea of what the financial return for this council is. We can't make a decision on that basis.
Thank you, Councillor. I will add, though, that committee has had this report for some time, and if there was information that was absent from the report that committee members wanted to see, there would have been an opportunity to have raised that in advance of this evening, and we might have found ourselves in a different position. But this is where we are, and we note your disagreement. But we will take that as an action from committee, that we will seek that advice to clarify whether or not the information can be shared under part 2 in a subsequent meeting. I'm assuming, officers, that we're not in a position to get that advice now.
I'm afraid, Chair, we don't have the monitoring officer online, unfortunately.
No. Okay, thank you.
Obviously, if that had been raised previously, we would have invited the monitoring officer to come along, or a legal officer to come along.
Yeah, thank you. I want to give any remaining non-committee members the opportunity to speak if they'd like to do that. Does anybody else want to come in? No. In that case, we move to committee members, and I invite Councillor Iannucci-Williams, please.
Thanks, Chair. I had a couple of questions for Marcus. So one of them is linked to specifically about the bathing water quality that you mentioned earlier. So is there a difference between the quality that we are testing for, and how is that different to testing it as bathing water? And if we are encouraging people into the water, why would we not be testing it as bathing water if there is a difference in those two quality levels? My second question then is, in the report 2.12 says that indirect effects for the economic benefit. Indirect, it feels a little bit vague. What are those, and does that include any negative effects that there might have been? So it would just be helpful to have some more detail on that. And then my third one is sort of a question linked to Councillor Hooper's point of order, in that, so it could be taken outside of the meeting, but if it's commercially sensitive because the business wouldn't necessarily want to share it, does that mean we could have the information if the business did agree to share it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Marcus, could you come back in on those points, please?
Yes, certainly, Chair. In terms of bathing quality or bathing water, there are certain European standards which are still retained in terms of the sea and certain other waters around the UK which you have to apply if you're going to get bathing quality water standards. We're aware of this because of what's happened in Ogmore and in other areas. And essentially, those revolve around a testing regime which goes back, I believe, 4 years. It's not my area of expertise, but I rely on others to advise, but that's what I believe it would entail. In this particular case, we are not encouraging bathing outside of the aquapark in the lake. The use of the aquapark itself is not essentially, although people do enter the water and swim there, it's not long-term, not as long-term swimming use, which is why it was able to operate in Cardiff Bay, because unfortunately the water quality there is not bathing quality standard. That being said, we are very confident that the water in the lake is of a really high standard. It's unfortunately the case that the testing that we've undertaken in the past, because it's not really been associated with bathing quality water, perhaps hasn't been as rigorous in terms of the location the water was actually tested as it would have been if we were expecting people to go into the water. So what we did do in this particular case, because we had the opportunity to run a pilot, was to undertake a very strict testing regime in the actual location of the lake. And we're going to continue that regime now into this year, when there's no actual activity in that particular location. So we can look at what the figures do show us in the middle of that lake, or certainly away from the side of the lake. So just to clarify, we are not encouraging people into the water at any time other than regulated activities. And we are, although we are confident the quality is good, we are carrying on that testing regime so that we can be sure that what we do ultimately end up with is a position where we know the water is safe. We will not be at this stage applying for bathing quality water for Cosmoston because we are not encouraging people to swim in the lake. In terms of apologies, your second question related to the report, and I didn't catch where in the report you were referring to.
I think the second question was, we've agreed as a committee that we need to get advice about whether the information about finances can be shared. I think Councillor was asking if the Aquapark organisation gave permission for that, could it then be shared as part two?
The second one was 2.12 in the report says, including indirect effects, the total economic impact of the aquapark was £960,000. What is an indirect effect?
So okay, sorry, yes, sure. The indirect effects are around the tourism and economic benefits. So those will be around an assessment of the number of visitors that came, how much they will have brought and spent in the Vale of Glamorgan. So the indirect effects will be an assessment of, did they spend money on food, drink, and other activities outside or in the country park, and the figures are essentially a mechanism of attributing some figure to that. So we use a consultant called STEAM. They are tourism consultants, actually, which assess our tourism results year on year. We use the same company to undertake this assessment for us, in giving us a figure which we could attribute to the benefit of the aqua park being in the country park. I hope that explains that one to you, and please ask if I haven't explained that properly. And then the last question I think you asked was around could we disclose the figure if the operator was happy. I'm pretty sure we could, certainly in part 2. It's an issue for them around what they pay us and what they would pay in another location in terms of a figure to operate. So for them, it's an issue of commercial sensitivity. It's not so much of an issue for us, although obviously one of the things we wouldn't really want is in the public domain, because that would have an impact in the future if we were to offer out any future leisure opportunities at the country parks. But that's not to say that it couldn't be disclosed if the operator was not going to object.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Councillor Stephen William, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to switch the camera off to save bandwidth, so hopefully you can hear me. Members of this committee and officers will know of my long-term opposition to sanitising natural beauty. I've been talking about it lots with Pwyllgor Park, and I do feel that this was what was attempted as well in Cosmiston. But I've got 3 questions really to ask. Firstly, midway through the pilot, we know that starry stonewater was discovered around the anchoring system. And by the way, to this point, I must apologise. I lost contact with the meeting for some point, so if this is a repeat of some questions that have been asked, forgive me. I'll be very quick. We know that starry stonewater was discovered around the anchoring system of the aqua park. Now the species is confirmed by Natural Resources Wales to be on East Lake. So, firstly, does this call into serious question any prospect of attaining a scent in the future? Secondly, we understand that regards to the killer shrimp that Marcus mentioned, we know that a working boat was launched at Cosmiston in June, and suspect that it came from the Rutland water, which is confirmed to have killer shrimp. So the SSSI ascent conditions said that boats should be dry stored for 8 months, and given that we now know killer shrimp eDNA was found at Cosmiston, do we know what biosecurity protocols were followed? Finally, there was a PAP request made by the Action Group, who I'd like to thank for all their hard work, and that's dated on the 7th of August 2025. And it was advised that the matter of planning, reflective of the Council's commitment to monitor and review the impacts of the aqua park, would be referred back to the Planning Enforcement Officer for review and reconsideration. So the question is, has this review taken place or not? Because if so, this is truly a critical part of the evaluation process, particularly considering the mention of future considerations for both Cosmiston and Pwyllgor. So I hope you've got all that. Thank you.
We did, Councillor, thank you. I think some of it was probably addressed already, but it's worth repeating. And I hope you're able to hear what Marcus is going to share with us now. Thank you, Marcus.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor William. So in terms of the starry stonewort, although the actual SSI designation for the country park did refer to it being located in the only the Western Lake, because that's where it had been discovered, we were aware, and so were NRW, that there was a good chance it was in the Eastern Lake as well. No further survey work had been undertaken before the aqua park was located there. Some of you will be aware, because it was on the website, the council's website, I think it is still there, that the company who put the aqua park there commissioned a diving survey of the lake itself, and starry stonewort was seen in the Eastern Lake at that point, and so NRW were aware that it was there before issuing the assent. Obviously, since it's been in place, the starry stonewort actually has increased considerably in the Eastern Lake and is doing extremely well there, whether the aqua park was there or not. And it seems to have really taken hold there. And we're advised by NRW, as I suppose you could argue by virtue of the fact that they've already issued another assent, only very recently, for the retention of the concrete anchors, that there would be no bearing on Starry Stone. The starry stonewall being present in the Eastern Lake would have no bearing on any future assent that might or might not be issued. In respect of your second question about the killer shrimp, because as I'm sure you're aware, boats are being launched into Cosmeston on quite a number of occasions. We have the Canoe Club who are present there. The Dive Club itself often launches a boat, and we ourselves in the Council of the Rangers have a boat which they use for sampling purposes and for other purposes, sometimes to actually ask people to get out of the water in the summer and for other purposes like that. Those boats have to go through a very, very clear biosecurity cleaning process before they can, when they come out of the lake and before they can be put back in the lake. So we have those processes in place, partly because there is already invasive species in the lake. The zebra mussels, which are referred to, are an invasive species, and because they are present, we have very strict biosecurity measures in place. You did refer to a boat which entered the water, which was owned by the company and was, we believe, it came from Rutland Water. That boat will have had to have gone through the same biosecurity measures as any other boat that's put into Cosmeston Lake. It is quite likely that there are invasive species or boats have come to the lake from areas where there have been invasive species before, including the Canoe Club. It's Cardiff Canoe Club who use the water. Those boats are used elsewhere in rivers which have invasive species in. So basically, we have a very strict biosecurity method which has to be undertaken before boats can go in there. There's a cleaning area next to the launch ramp where boats have to be cleaned off and inspected before they can go in the water and when they come out of the water. And then finally, you referred to the Planning Commission and the assessment that was made. Because a formal complaint was made, what we did, the council's enforcement officer did reconsider the advice that was given, and the advice was that the Planning Commission remains not required for what was there and what operated there this year. Were that to be located there more permanently, and were there to be a more permanent building or any other feature there, it is likely that would be a slightly different situation. But we're not at that position at the moment. We're obviously carrying out our baseline assessment, and the planning position will be considered as part of that baseline assessment process.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Councillor William, did you want to come back in on that, or is that sufficient?
There were very comprehensive answers, Chair. It was just one minor thing I wanted to pick up on, which was the fact that the protocol that the action group spends a lot of money on trying to achieve. Was any comment made about the protocol? I would have thought that they would have had to have done that. I just want to be absolutely sure that was referred to in the reconsideration. Thanks.
I'm assuming Councillor Williams is referring to the planning issue because this is what was referred back. And yes, any information that was submitted by the group would have been fully considered before any further decision was made.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Anthony Ernest, please. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we're already 1 hour and 10 minutes into the meeting, so memories may fade at this stage, but I trust not. The first question I need to put, I think, is what is the purpose of the park? Cosmeston Lakes Country Park, the very name tells it all, Lakes, Park, Country. And yet we tried to turn it into an adventure park, something like Chesington Zoo or Thorpe Park. That, I think, is the impression that many people got. If you look at parks that other local authorities have, let's take Roath Park in Cardiff, a beautiful park. It's been there for 100 years or more, and yet Cardiff Council don't allow any sort of activities on there other than boating. The boating goes well, and we were all agreed the boating goes well at Cosmeston. Look at Bridgend. I think it's a Bringarrow Country Park. Again, a lovely park for those who've been there. I've been there many times. No activities of the sort that we had forced on us at Cosmeston. So we have to look at the purpose of the park. Cosmeston won a Prince of Wales award way back. When you go into the park through the gate and turn right, you'll see the plaque there, if it's still there. And I just wonder whether King Charles today would approve of what we actually have done to the park. He awarded the Prince of Wales Award when he was the Prince, and now, of course, Chairman, he's the King. So he might well have a different view, but I appreciate he's a long way from Cosmiston. We have to ask, what do council taxpayers actually want of their park? Do they want a park? Do they want an activity area? Do they want a commercialised thing? Do they want it to be making money? And maybe all of those things or none of them. But those are the questions that need to be asked, Chairman. Now, those with long memories, like Councillor Willem and others, will remember this was a former chemical dump back in the 60s or 70s. We don't know how many tons of chemicals in 45-gallon drums were dumped in the park. We know that stolen cars are being dumped in there. We know that people have actually drowned in there, but I won't dwell on the latter point. And the park has been cleaned up over the years, but a big lake with a depth of something like 50, 60 feet is still 50, 60 feet, and we really don't know what's at the bottom of it. Can I just turn about the number of visitors? 16,000 visitors, with the word including spectators. And I would suggest that spectators were mainly the visitors, not the fee-paying customers for the events. And visitors, we're told, and I'm sorry to go over this again, spent £645,000. I found this an incredible figure. And yet we're told that that's maybe across the Vale. I would say it spent that sort of money on Penarth Pier or Barry Island. But anyway, and the total economic impact, Chairman, £960,000 across the Vale. That raised my question mark in my mind, because we're talking about Cosmiston Lakes, and yet we're talking about the tourism impact across the whole of the Vale. The two things do not quite tie up. And of course, 22% of that came from Vale residents, 78% visitors. I expect much of the income of visitors was from parking fees, which this authority introduced last year, and the cafe, which people do spend money at, and well done. But I suspect it's not from much else. I have to say that the local ward members for this part of Penarth, myself and Councillor Rhys-Thomas, were absolutely against it. We made this clear week after week after week from the very beginning, and yet we were effectively totally ignored. And if local members on the council cannot be considered carefully, there's something very wrong with our democratic processes. And I think, coming to the end, Chairman, the impact on local residents who actually pay for the park. Remember, it's not the visitors who pay for the park, it's the council taxpayers in the Vale of Glamorgan, and in particular the Sully wards and Dinas Powys wards and Penarth wards, who help keep that park going. And I think that from all I've heard tonight, and what I'm sure I'll hear again, those residents do not want that sort of activity anymore once again. And finally, Chairman, of course, the council's been scrabbling for income from any possible source over the last few years. It spends money like water, and it needs to get money back. But that's an issue to close on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Marcus, I think many of those issues you've addressed already, so please don't feel that you need to repeat yourself. Perhaps you could say something about the numbers that Councillor Ernest has queried, and I'm sure Councillor Ernest will come back in if he's unsatisfied with that response. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to pick up on one point which Councillor Ernest made, and obviously as Councillor Ernest being a very long-standing member of the council, or certainly having over a period of time been a member of the council for some years, it's important to note that the actual history of Cosmiston is sometimes a bit blurred by what's gone on. We have, and I have it on my screen here, but I won't share it now for you, but I have the original master plan for the country park. And obviously in the countryside section we have that, which was and the history is interesting because the park was originally established by the former South Glamorgan Council, and then handed over to Vale of Glamorgan Council, obviously as part of reorganisation. But as part of that, the two lakes are present on that master plan, with the lake on the west identified as a natural area and the lake on the east identified as active recreation. And I think, we members who are certainly long-standing members of the council must remember that that lake was used for numerous purposes before the park itself opened, and when the land was being reclaimed, it was used actually for motorboating in the past. That obviously, thank goodness, use ceased, but has been the use of the water has been a very, for leisure purposes, has been an ongoing thing for many, many years, since the early 1980s when the park itself opened. So I'm sure Councillor Ernest is aware of that, but I just thought it would be worth pointing that out. In terms of the water testing, I think Councillor Ernest did mention the previous use of the land, and that is clearly a relevant issue. It's important to note that as a council, every year we carry out a separate test of the water for heavy metals and any other chemical contaminants. That's because obviously there is a long-standing history of the site being used in the past as a tip and a quarry. And that testing is absolutely fundamental to us, because obviously we want both the waters to be really good quality, and we have a natural area, and it is a site of special scientific interest. So just to rest assured that testing for not just for general E. coli and other, if you like, fecal type of contamination, but actually for metals, chemicals, and other contaminants, that is undertaken on a yearly basis to ensure there is no leachate or anything else coming into the lake. And then finally, just referring to the tourism issue, Councillor Hurst, I'm sure, is used to the way these assessments are undertaken, but what is done is an assessment is undertaken having regard to the fact that 16,000 people will have visited the park to specifically use the aqua park, or to visit to actually undertake to watch other people doing that, and that figure which is provided will have assessed that and will have come to a conclusion. We use consultants for that purpose.
Thank you very much, Marcus.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll just come back and thank Marcus for his answers, which I think draw out a number of the questions being raised this evening, and it's good to hear the officers' views on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think you raised some points at the beginning of your contribution, which are probably not for officers to address really, in terms of what's the purpose of our parks, etc. So I think the cabinet member is still on still part of the meeting, and I just wondered, Councillor Brooks, whether or not you want to comment on that, because that feels to me to be perhaps a political councillor issue rather than an officer issue. If you want to come in and add anything to that, thank you.
Yeah, it is a political issue that's been raised there. I think we just need to bear in mind that this park is for everybody to use. It's a country park. It's not going to be turned into a theme park, as has been inferred there. It's for recreational use. It's for wildlife. It's for habitat. And it's for people that can just want a quiet walk at times as well. So it's that real mix of people. And I think it's quite a unique park and country park. And I just think it's so important that we allow this assessment to take place first before we make any more decisions, and really to try and embrace that. Take part in it. Put your views in what you'd like to see there. Some will say nothing, but then others actually might come forward and say, actually, this sort of thing could work there. So I would really welcome everybody's views within that. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We've been going at this for an hour and 20 minutes, and I can see two more committee members who want to speak. So we're going to bring those committee members in, and then I'm going to draw this agenda item to a close, and we're going to take a short break. But Councillor Ian Perry, please.
Hi again, good evening. I am surprised to hear this evening that the containers are being removed 6 months after the operation ceased last summer. So that's a bit disappointing. And let's not forget that different uses create conflict, and that's what's happened. Hence, 2,000 emails have been generated, and there's been lots of complaints. And yes, the activity that was offered last year was very popular with a segment of people, but it was equally in conflict with the use of the park by another segment, which may or may not have been considerably larger. I am disappointed that when officers and the cabinet member have talked about income generation and the financial sustainability of the country park, we don't know or have any idea of the income that the council made or any of the costs that the council incurred in hosting the aqua park. So did we make a profit? Did we make a loss? How much? And what benefits that brings? So we are still in the dark. So I'm very disappointed with that, and I think that could have gone into part 2. We've had tests undertaken that we've been told were taken in the wrong location. How did that error occur? Readings are now taken from a small boat rather from the edge where people tend to paddle or climb into the aqua park. So there's quite a bit of uncertainty there. And having used the lake for a water activity last summer, we're now going to test for a year to make sure it is actually safe in there. So I think Anthony Ernest brought up loads of really good points as well. And Chair, can I ask, can I make an amendment to the recommendation for Cabinet? Can I do that now, or shall I have to wait a couple of minutes?
We're not at recommendations yet, Councillor, so hang fire and we'll come back to you once everybody's finished speaking and the formal debate is over. Thank you.
Okay, I'll let Caris carry on now and come back.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't think there was a question in that, so I will bring Councillor Stallard in. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, I do think it would be helpful for us to have more clarity on the numbers. I know other members have talked about this tonight, other councillors have talked about the 2.12, the figures in that paragraph. For example, how many people pay to use the aqua park is something that's not spelt out. The visitors, it would be useful to know if that includes people who visit Cosmiston not to watch or participate in the aqua park in any way. I just, it would be useful, for example, to have numbers of visitors from the previous season, 2024, so that we can compare. If we can't have the information about how much money the council got from the aqua park to put it in Cosmiston for the summer season, if that is commercially sensitive, then we do at least need some more detail on the numbers that we've got here, because it's very vague. It's not clear who's there for the aqua park, who's there for the park itself, and I would welcome some more meaningful numbers so that we can compare and contrast. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Marcus, is there anything you're able to say about that at this point?
Well, we do have the figures for the actual users of the water park. The 16,000 figure is the number of visitors plus spectators. It may have been useful to have that request beforehand, because I could have actually asked for the figure to be brought out. But the 16,000 figure is what's been used by our tourism consultants and is based on the information they were provided by the company for. What's important to note here is that as a council, we don't operate a counter mechanism for people coming in and out of the park. So although we have a rough indication by use of car parking figures and by other estimations of people who use the park, we don't actually clock people in and out. So people don't pay to enter the park. The only method they pay by is the car parking. So when we've made an assessment on increase, and we have made an assessment that there was an increase in the use of the park, that is around the number of vehicles who pay to park there. And we've compared that to the years previously, because obviously we've had parking charges in place for some years now at the country park. And we've used that to make an assessment on uplift for our figures. In terms of the actual aqua park, of course, that was a private operation that was not run by us, that was run by somebody else. Those figures were provided to our tourism consultants to provide the figures that should be provided the background to this report. So it just to spell that out, I think probably there's a bit of a lack of clarity there. We were paid as a council by the operator, but that figure was an agreed figure. The actual payments to use the aqua park were made to the company themselves, and that is their information. They did provide it to our tourism consultants to actually make an assessment of what the overall global figure would have been, and that's what's put in this report.
Thank you, Marcus. Councillor Stallard, did you want to come back in on that, or is that sufficient for you?
I'm still confused, I'm afraid. So the 16,000, Marcus said it was visitors and spectators. So visitors to the aqua park and spectators who just happen to be passing, or is that, do you pay as a spectator to visit the aqua park? I don't understand, I'm afraid.
Marcus, if you can
Chair,
shed any light.
That figure was provided by the company as an indication of the paying visitors to use, or paying users of the aqua park plus spectators associated with it. So they provided that figure. We weren't counting those.
So 16,000 users plus spectators, or 16,000 users?
16,000 in total. So that's
Okay.
plus including spectators.
So those are people who wouldn't otherwise visit Cosmeston, essentially.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, committee. Thank you, councillors. We've had a very long debate and discussion on this, and I am going to draw it to a close and attempt to sum up. And then I'm aware Councillor Perry wants to make a recommendation, and there may be others. It's been a really long, helpful discussion, I think, and important to recognise that there are still clearly very strong views remain about the use of Cosmeston for leisure purposes. I think officers have attempted to respond to the concerns raised in detail. And as has been made clear, the focus moving forward is on testing and surveying, and nothing will happen in Cosmeston this year while that testing and surveying is being carried out. And any future decisions regarding a leisure activity in Cosmeston Park will be informed by the surveys and the water testing that's being done. And at that point, if appropriate, if there is another proposal, that will go through Cabinet and no doubt come back to this committee. So I want to thank everybody for their contribution, particularly the members of the public who's joined us this evening and taken time out to raise their issues with us. Councillor Perry, please.
Yeah, my amendment would be that given the public opposition and concerns over water quality, the Scrutiny Committee recommends activities including aqua park operations potentially exposing children to contaminated water are not permitted at Cosmeston Country Park. Have you got that? Are you there, Chair?
Sorry, I'm just taking some advice. Forgive me, Councillor. Yeah. Okay. So, Councillor William, you wanted to come in? Are you with us, Councillor William? I think Councillor William is having some connection problems. So we have a recommendation from Councillor Perry before us, and Councillor Hooper, you also want to come in at this point.
Yeah, I'll just second that recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to try again for Councillor William. No, then we will move to vote up.
Sorry, Chair, he's coming.
Yeah, you're here.
Now.
Go ahead, Councillor William.
Councillor William, can you hear us? Councillor William, can you hear us? Councillor William, can you check just try via audio if you can't get your camera to work? I don't know if you can put anything in the chat.
Okay, I'm really sorry, Councillor. I think we've made several attempts to get you back in, and I'm afraid we're not going to do that. So, Councillor Hooper, did you want to come back in again?
Yeah, it's just administration. Just Stefan William, Councillor William has just said that he was prepared to second. So I think we've done that.
You've already done that. Thank you. So we have a recommendation before us. Can I ask officers to give us the wording of that recommendation, please?
Hi, I'm sorry about this. The signal's back and forth. I was seconding the amendment, and it has been.
That's
if
the
I
right
can't get through it again, could you just note that I am supporting the amendment? That is my vote. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not an amendment, it's a recommendation, and we'll just take the wording of that now. Thank you.
Right, Chair, can I just double check with Councillor Perry the wording of the recommendation again, please?
Yep, here we go. Right, and you look at a recorded vote, you might as well. Good job I wrote it down, isn't it? Given the public opposition and concerns over water quality, the Scrutiny Committee recommends activities, including aquapark operations, potentially exposing children to contaminated water, are not permitted.
Thank you, Councillor. I hope all committee members have got that, and we will move to a vote. Thank you.
We're just setting up the vote now, just because obviously there's quite a bit of various elements in it. As long as committee are happy, we've just put a basic vote for people, members to either support, either for or against the recommendation outlined by Councillor Perry. So it'll be up for members to vote once we get it ready, and it will be a recorded vote. Right, the vote is started, Chair. So the options should come up now to either vote for, against, or abstain. We'll double check now, Chair. We've got two members that have not been able to vote, so if I can just double check. Councillor William, what would be your vote? I take it's 4, but I just wanted to confirm that. Councillor Ernest, can we just double check? You may have had issues voting.
Yes, I'm unable to vote on stream. I'm for the amendment.
For the recommendation from Councillor Perry.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you very much for confirming that. I just want to double check again, Councillor William. Can you indicate whether you would be voting for or against the proposed recommendation? I'm taking it you would have voted for, but obviously we can't see it on the system. Councillor Hooper, I don't know if you're in contact with Councillor William. I don't know if you can confirm his intention. I guess what it is, but obviously for the record, I want to be sure that we get the right result.
So I can't speak. So he is indicating for, but he actually said it prior to this. If he was cut off, that he was voting for this amendment. So I think that's what I would take as his vote personally.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Hooper. Yeah, thank you. Right. With those votes tallied in, Chair, we've got 6 for, 6 against. We will bring up the recorded vote options now. Obviously, they won't include Councillors William and Councillor Ernest. Obviously, Councillor Penn is not with us tonight. So that would make 6 for and 6 against the recommendation. Therefore, you would have the casting vote, Chair.
Thank you very much, councillors. And my casting vote is against that recommendation. So the recommendation is not carried.
Chairman, may I just say I'm shown as not voting. I've indicated
No,
you have, councillor, but we have counted we have counted your vote.
Okay.
That a manual vote counted, councillor. So therefore, with your vote and Councillor Williams, it would be 6 for and 6 against. Therefore, the vote is tied, and therefore the chair would have the casting vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before I move to a short break, I just want to say again that, you know, the committee absolutely has recognised the concerns that residents and others have made. And officers have made it clear that that testing and surveying is going to happen to ensure that the ecological impact of any future leisure activity drives the decision making in this council. And I rest on that. So we're going to take a short break. Councillor Perry?
Yeah, we haven't voted on the actual proposals in front of us. Can I make a second
We don't. Sorry, just to be clear, we don't have any recommendations in front of us. Those recommendations that are in the report are for cabinet. The recommendation for this committee was that we considered the report with any comments going back to cabinet. What we have agreed as a committee is there is an action for officers to go away and speak to the aqua park operators to see whether or not the financial information can be shared with this committee under part 2. And if it can be, then obviously officers will set a date for us to do that under part 2 as quickly as possible. I hope that's clear.
Can I?
Sorry, hang on, Councillor Hooper. We are descending into a degree of chaos. Councillor Perry, does that answer your query?
Yeah, I have a second amendment potential to put forward to the members of the Scrutiny Committee, if I might.
I've taken recommendations, Councillor, and I've said that I'm closing this debate. Let me just take advice from officers at this stage.
You can't, I mean, at the moment, we either note the report or the recommendation is about the financial aspects.
Councillor, I'm not going to sit here all night taking recommendations. I do need to bring this item to a close. So if you could just explain what it is you're looking for, and then I'm going to bring Councillor Hooper in, and then I'm going to move that we note the report if there are no further recommendations.
Okay, going back to the discussion we've had, I think the Scrutiny Committee should note the following, that the precautionary principle is applied and the maximum weighting is given to the protection of the ecosystem of the lakes, with no weight given to council income when we in future consider aqua park activities and the like at Cosmiston Country Park and Lakes.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Hooper?
I'll second that. I think that's a good recommendation. Thank you.
Then we will move to a vote on that recommendation. Can you repeat it, please, Councillor?
Oh God, right, yes, and now
And
I
it's
only
fine,
wrote down-
councillor. What we'll do, we obviously committee should have heard everything has been said, so we'll do again simple for or against your recommendation. Again,
Okay.
we'll do vote.
I have got most of it written down. If you want to hear it again,
Oh, okay, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay, councillor. If you want to go through again, it's fine. But if not, the committee should have the essentials of what you've said anyway. It's entirely up to you.
Cool.
Can it be recorded, please, Chair?
Yeah, we'll obviously do that now. We'll set up the vote again now. The vote has started, committee. Obviously, we might get the issue again with Councillor William and Councillor Ernest. Obviously, with Councillor William this time, I don't know his intention, but Councillor Ernest can let me know at the end of the vote. We'll just bring up the recorded vote now, Chair. Individual results. Right. Yeah. Councillor Ernest, could you indicate whether you're going to vote for or against the vote, please?
For the vote.
So just to be clear, just to make sure I get this correct, for you voting for Councillor Perry's recommendation.
Correct. That is correct.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So that gives us now, Chair, 6-5. So 6 for the recommendation, 5 against. So the recommendation is carried.
Thank you, officers. Thank you, committee. I am now going to move to a short break. We'll just take a 3-minute comfort break. And sorry, before that, you're going to remind me that I should move that we note the report.
Obviously got the Councillor Perry's recommendation now. And I take that will go back to Cabinet as a comment. We also have the financial request for officers. Are we including that as a recommendation?
I think we were taking that as an agreed action.
Just an agreed action, so not a recommendation. Yeah. So in terms of the report, we've got the one recommendation. So
we have.
That will go back to Cabinet if committees are happy
for their consideration.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Point of order, please, Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor.
This was the point I was going to make before Councillor Perry came with the last recommendation, is that I asked for advice on this matter to be provided. So it's not up to the company's discretion. It's also up to, that's one of the ways we could deal with this. The other way is the monitoring officer could make a decision that existing councillors, because they're subject to confidentiality clauses as part of their contracts, also understand that information separately as well. So I think this is a matter of internal as well as external consultation.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Councillor Hooper. That's a helpful clarification. So the minutes should note that we will seek legal advice on that issue, as well as officers engaging with the aquapark provider as to whether or not the information being sought is commercially sensitive. And we will take both those views into consideration, and that information will be fed back to committee when we have a decision. Thank you. 5-minute break, everybody, and then we'll be back to deal with the other agenda items. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and welcome back to committee members and all those who are joining us this evening. Next is agenda item 5, Environment and Housing and Place Directorate Plans for 26-27. These are with us for endorsement, with any recommendations referred back to Cabinet. And just to remind members that these are the primary plans for the Council and the key means by which performance will be monitored and measured in 26-27. Not everything in the plans before us falls under the scope of this committee. So I will ask committee members to make sure that they only ask questions that are relevant to the scope of this committee. Marcus, I believe you're still with us, and I think we're also joined by Trevor Baker, who's the Interim Director of Environment and Housing. Welcome to you, Trevor. I'm sorry you've had to wait so long for this agenda item this evening. Not sure who's taking us through this first. Trevor, thank you. Over to you.
Howdy, good evening, folks. So what we thought we'd do, we're going to do a bit of a double act. I'm going to talk you through a bit of the context of the Directorate plans, the mechanisms around them, and what you've got before you tonight. I'll then talk through at a high level, the Directorate of Environment and Housing plans, and Marcus has a few slides then to talk through his elements as well. We do have some slides. Mark, I don't know if you've... Oh, amazing.
Yeah, my colleague's got them up now.
There we go. Perfect. So if we go over to slide 3, I've just done slide 1. There we go. So this is the context by which we're presenting the information tonight. So this is linked to Vale 2030, which is the Council's corporate plan. That's where we outline our obligations, and we have our mechanisms for performance monitoring and planning arrangements. We take an integrated approach to business planning across the Council, and this piece of work aligns with our self-assessment and budget setting process. So none of these elements that we're looking at are done in isolation. They're all meant to link together and complement each other. There's a total of 5 directorate plans across the local authority. As the chair mentioned, you'll see 2 of those tonight. Not all elements are relevant for this committee, however. And then we're asking for feedback and recommendations, which would then get referred back to Cabinet for April to approve the plans. And then we have an annual statement within the Council, which gets reported in May, which looks at those collective elements. So it will look at the directorate plans, it will look at feedback from residents, and it will look at self-assessment information. Next slide, please. So the key point, this is quite a large document in front of you, so we're going to assume that it's been read. It's about 115 pages, so we're going to give you a high-level overview. The plans include some of the planned activities that we have for the year, some of the performance measures, qualitative and quantitative, some baseline assessment measures, which we'll talk about in a moment, and some performance targets for the next year. We've gone through a process within the Council through the development of these plans for moderation. So they've been down through the Strategy and Insight Advisory Group with the Chief Exec, and they've been through moderation across all 5 directors within the Council. One, to make sure there is that internal element of challenges for setting the plans and confirming them, but equally to make sure that they do complement each other and they are working hand in glove. Relevant Cabinet members have also been through the plans as well as part of that process. Next slide. The structure of the plans, then, they're all structured in the same way, broken down into 5 different sections: who we are and what we do across the different directorates, what the purpose of the plan is, how we manage our resources to deliver on those priorities that have been identified, what we're going to do in 26-27, and how do we measure success and know that what we're doing is on the right track. In terms of scrutiny, I've mentioned the things we're asking for this evening, and that the chair has mentioned as well, which is endorsing the recommendations and planned activities and proposed measures, and giving forward any recommendations as well. Next slide. So if we start off with the Environment and Housing Directorate Plan, the forthcoming year, there's 5 sections within the plan. The ones that are relevant for this committee essentially are number 2, improving our neighbourhood, streets and environment, transport and active travel, and reshaping priorities. The other elements have been dealt with in the Live Well Scrutiny Committee. Next slide. In terms of managing our resources, so these are just some of the highlights just to bring to your attention. There's some information there around the overall budget for this area of the council, which is 32.148 million for 26-27. There's some details in there around some of the efficiency savings, income targets, and service improvement opportunities. So how can we do things differently, and what impact is that going to have on the limited resources that we have available? And some of the ones that have been outlined in there is standard stuff that we see across the board around inflationary increases that we see year on year, transport policy transformation, traffic procurement opportunities in coastal region, and other commercial opportunities. And next to each one of those is just the target set for those pieces of work. There's also a section in there that looks at some key engagement activity for the year ahead. What I would say, and it's the same for all of the points and elements in the current directorate plan, and these are done at a point in time. We need to remain agile. So if there are things that come up, obviously, we're not precluded from doing any sort of consultation and engagement with folks as well. But the ones outlined in there at the moment, the headliners are public consultations around any changes to traffic regulation orders, which is standard practice. As well as a consultation with everybody in the Vale around the full rollout for soft plastics and textile recycling in 26-27. This is something that we've piloted in different parts of the Vale, which has been very successful. We've had some excellent feedback from residents. They've really pitched in and embraced it. And there's some really positive benefits that we're going to discuss with residents going forward. In terms of our corporate risks, those are identified within the plan. There's 3 main ones that affect us as a directorate. One is around housing and homelessness. It's right up there towards the top of the list. The second, which I'm sure will come as no surprise, the lack of capital for structural assessments on key infrastructure assets. We do have a challenge within the council around the availability of resources and how we manage those in an environment with increasing costs and increasing demands and needs. And we have quite an extensive and in some cases quite aging infrastructure that requires a lot of investments. So having to balance those priorities with what we have available to us and maximizing the value of every pound that's spent. And then we've also got recruitment and retention challenges for business critical posts. So within this directorate, for example, that might be specialist posts around engineering. That might be some of the specialist functions around our frontline services. Making sure that we're able to attract, retain, train up, and provide opportunities for those staff who join us and make sure that they continue to be employed by the council as opposed to going elsewhere. Next slide, please. What I thought I would do is, because there are over 80 actions within the directorate plan, just as a summary, I've broken it down into a couple of different headings with some overarching themes that they all contribute to, just to give you a flavor of what we're trying to achieve. That's done in section 4 of the directorate report. So in terms of things we need to keep doing, it's the bread and butter of the work. So that's a high quality waste and recycling service, the work I mentioned on soft plastics and textiles, and waste minimization initiatives, and you'll see some of the targets in there around our recycling targets and the residual waste targets and reducing those residual waste targets going forward. What we see, feel, touch, and look at within our communities is also of critical importance. So maintaining street cleanliness, ground maintenance, park safety, and environmental enforcement. Looking at our active travel programs, improving our transport connectivity, and promoting concessionary travel schemes. So there's some exciting pieces of work that are happening looking at our rural bus services, for example, some of the active travel we have around some of our new build programs in our towns, for example, as well. We have continued delivery of our risk flood management, coastal protection and pollution prevention work with our regional partners. So Not all of this we can be delivering in isolation, obviously. We work with partners like Dŵr Cymru, Natural Resources Wales, for example, when we're looking at flood risk and coastal protection, and our own shared regulator services as well. And then how do we continue to work well and strengthen the multi-agency work around public spaces and safety, and using some of the technologies around CCTV, community safety plans, and targeted interventions with some of our partners like South Wales Police, for example, in addressing some of those. The plan as well, there are a number of things we need to look at what we do differently. We've got, sorry, my screen has just gone blank. We've got what success looks like. There we go. So it's pretty straightforward stuff. Cleaner, better, well-maintained public spaces. We've got some exciting work happening with the launch of the Street Scene service. So this is dedicated town centre teams working within our town centres, as well as one peripatetic team working remotely across other communities who live, breathe, work, and will be dedicated to enhancing the environment within our town centres, which is something that folks have been asking for quite some time. And we're now in a position where we can deliver that, which is exciting. I talked about recycling performance. We've had the rollout and piloting of plastic film and textiles. And this, as I mentioned, has proved really successful. So as a local authority, we've been able to achieve and go above actually Welsh Government's target for recycling. And it's how do we roll this provision out to the whole Vale, and how do we build on that and go from just over 70% and upwards for recycling. We want a more connected Vale. So as I said, we have quite a dispersion of different communities across the Vale of every type. So how do we make sure that these folks are able to connect to what we have across our towns, not just within our towns? And how does that contribute to healthy and active lifestyles? And we know that has a big impact on things like well-being, on things like health, and on other pressures like the NHS, for example. There's some initiatives, and we've got a report coming next month around the tree strategy, what that looks like. So the canopy cover, we know that has a big bearing on terms of how our communities look, feel, and engage with. We've got some targets set there, and making sure that we are putting the right trees in the right places in both urban and rural settings is really important. And then climate resilience. So we know the position of the council with climate change, not just the council, with the entire planet, I should say, around climate change and the impacts that's having on our residents and on us in terms of our ability to deliver services. So making sure we've got resilient practices in place to deal with those is really, really important. If we go on to the next slide, please. And then these two sections, what do we need to keep doing and keep developing? So again, I've mentioned a lot of these as well. The further extension of what we do for recycling, continuing to innovate our approach in delivering models for street cleanliness, ground maintenance, and park safety. So we've got initiatives that we're doing around street cleaning, for example, but we need some more engagement and some more dialogue with local residents and local businesses in terms of what we do going forward, what they would like to see, and how we can enable some of that. And I'll touch on that in just a moment. In terms of the things that we need to do differently, there is a need, not just within the directorate, but in other parts of the council, around adopting a more coordinated and intelligent-led approach to services. So I've said this in previous meetings. In some areas, we are data rich, but we are information poor. How do we use that information, and how do we leverage the technologies available to us to be more predictive around some of the services that we might need to do? What it doesn't do is create a crystal ball for us when it comes to things like potholes and rain and those sorts of things. But what it does do is give us some level of predictability around planning, which allows us to be more proactive, and equally, it gives us the ability to look at what we do within our own services, how they impact other services within the directorate, and then more widely in terms of the rest of the council. We've got some priorities around the continued work with Project Zero and the decarbonisation of our fleet and what we do around EV charging and how we monitor some of that. And you'll see that in some of the baseline assessment data that we're looking to bring forward. I touched on the need for expanded community involvement and getting folks engaged. One, providing them with some more agency. Two, how do we continue to build trust with our communities? And how do we work to co-design some of the things that we're looking at doing? So whether that be park improvements, partnerships with town and community councils for local asset support. And I'll touch on a really good example of that in just a moment. We've also got the increased focus and need around biodiversity in naturalized areas, making sure we're making best use of the land that we've got around some of the Project Zero initiatives around that, and working in tandem with other directorates, especially Marcus's, around what we do with country parks and those sorts of things. Next slide, please. So in terms of how we measure success, there's a series of targets, as I mentioned in there. What I thought would be helpful, just really briefly, we've broken the targets down in these slides as to the types of targets that they are. And there's 4 different types, basically. So there's hard delivery targets, which are facts and figures, quantitative information. We've got some holding targets. These are predominantly in there to make sure there's no slippage in the services that we provide, but also recognizing some of the pressures and capacity that we're currently under at the moment. We've got some baseline measures, so we've got some new priorities that have come through, and we've got the need to create that baseline set of information so we have something to measure against, but also moving on to the next one, some context-only measures. So these are measures which are relevant to us. They give us an indication on our own performance, but equally there's lots of outcomes that are linked to external demand that we don't have control over, but we do need to be cognizant of some of those measures. And that gives us a balanced view in terms of what we're trying to do, how we're going to assess whether we're doing it well, and recognizing the realities of it. There's some examples on here of each one of those sets. So some of the headliners from the report. I won't go through them in detail. You can see them on the screen there, but there's some key ones that I mentioned around residual waste, reducing the black bag waste for folks, and increasing recycling. We've got the tree strategy, which has been really successful in terms of exceeding targets previously. We've got some measures around compliant routes for active travel. So again, to give a quantitative measure around what we're doing and how we're able to map that progress over time. Some information around, or some targets around wildflower and naturalized areas, and some stuff around regulatory services. Next slide, please. For maintenance targets, some examples there. So this is maintaining public realm cleanliness, given the current resources that we have and challenges that we have. This is not looking at not being ambitious. What it is allowing us to do is, one, to make sure that there's a safety net for the services that we deliver and the standards that we deliver, whilst also creating some capacity to reshape and look at our services and those target operating models. How can we do things differently and improve the services we have with what we've got available to us, if possible? There's some measures in there around waste and recycling and zero emission fleet, which I mentioned. And then there's some examples in there around some new indicators for setting a baseline. So I mentioned around kilometers or miles of improved travel networks, carbon footprint of our fleet, things around procurement and supplier and how that links to carbon reduction, the number of EV charging facilities, the number of playgrounds we've refurbished, those sorts of things. So that gives us a measure at a point in time, but over time it gives us the ability to look at our progress in terms of what we're delivering. Next slide, please. And then the last one is the context and intelligent measures. So these ones are targets that you'll see in the report, which support our decision making and within the directorate, your decision making as members. But they're influenced by wider economic, environmental, or social factors. So it's things like flooding, for example. We have limited control over the weather. Obviously, we've seen quite a lot of rain. That rain has yielded a huge impact in terms of the state of our roads, flooding issues, those sorts of things. levels of air, land and bathing water quality and pollution, how we look at real-time monitoring, how we work in partnership around those sorts of things, how we record some of the crime data that we have, and again, that informs some intelligence. One, so that we have a good idea what's going on, but two, so we can measure the impact of any interventions that we put in place. So it's not enough to say we're doing something differently. What we need to be able to do is we're doing something differently, and that has yielded X impact, which we are trying to achieve, or equally an impact that we didn't anticipate and we might need to correct. Next slide.
Forgive me in interrupting. I'm just conscious we're not even halfway through yet, and we're about 20 minutes. Can I just ask you to draw it to a close? And then I'm going to invite any questions or comments from committee members before we move on. Thank you.
No problem. This is, I think, the last one, if not second. So again, linking it all together, I've mentioned this previously. We don't look at things in isolation. We look at the impact on a wider scale, both in terms of cleaner, safer, and greener public spaces, but as well as resiliency for our communities. We're looking at our infrastructure. We're looking at that in terms of place. We're looking at it in terms of education, social services, and our corporate directorate. As well, and making sure that we are including folks within the communities and other partners in those decisions as part of the consultations that we do around these. We go on to the next slide. This is the last one for me, and then I'll be quiet. This is when I was talking about linking it all together. This is just a really recent example of the Town Booster program that was facilitated by Marcus's directorate, the community creative communities team, and Regen, which was supported by our directorate. And this just shows within a week the power that you can do with revitalizing town centres. And this is an example of some public toilets there. We had a very small amount of funding. We worked with partners and the community and business owners. And within 1 day, actually, it was 6 days of planning, 1 day of delivery, we were able to update this sort of thing. And it's more of this that we're looking to create and go forward as part of this directorate plan. So that's it for me. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Can we take the presentation down briefly? Lovely, thank you. Can I ask if there are any Cabinet members online who wanted to add any comments at this stage in terms of that bit of the presentation? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Trevor, for that presentation. Obviously, I've seen the director's report. And obviously, I feel, we made a really good job here in terms of what we're doing. Some highlights, as you say, is about our recycling. Clearly, it's very, very good. We're over about 71% now. We obviously want to achieve even higher. We're looking at even better data going forward. As you know, we're now rolling out soft plastics throughout the whole of Earl Morgan. I know that many people in Barry and other places have received communication about that. And I'm hoping that it'll be as successful as it is in Penarth and Dennis and Sully. So I'm really looking forward to that. The other thing that I would also like to point out is obviously that we are launching the Street Scene initiative from April, and that would be something really good. And obviously we'd like to hear the views of residents in particular about that. And absolutely that would mean that our town centres will be very, very much revitalised. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. This committee had a report on the street scene the last time we met, and I think it's fair to say it was greeted with enormous enthusiasm. It's a really positive, exciting initiative. Thank you. Before we move on to the rest of the presentation about the plans before us, are there any non-committee members that wanted to comment or ask any questions? No. Councillor Perks, your Cabinet member, you wanted to come in as well. Thank you. Are you with us, Councillor Perks? We can see your hand is up, but we're not connecting. Here we are. Go ahead.
Apologies. I didn't press the red button. So I just wanted to say how important this sort of plan is for the next year, and how sort of part of my portfolio, I have Safer Vale within that, and the work that they undertake with various different organisations to ensure that the people of the Vale have, sort of a safe environment to live in, and the ability to report incidents through different mechanisms and stuff like that. But I suppose also is, as the other bit of my portfolio, is housing and tenancy engagement. I know this has been discussed in other scrutinies, but it is very important that we have the housing plans for over the next 10 years with our partnership with Lovell and Cardiff Council, over 800 social houses to be built, and the quality of the houses that we're providing as well, but also the engagement that we have with our tenants to ensure that we're providing the service that they need to, that they carry on living in, the Welsh Housing Quality Standard properties as well. So I just wanted to say that I welcome this, the plan going forward for the next year. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor John, you wanted to come in? You were with us briefly, Councillor, and then we lost you. You're with us again. Please go ahead.
I'm very excited about this plan because, quite honestly, Trevor and the team have put a huge amount of work into this. And quite honestly, I'm very delighted to see that leisure has been included in the plan. We have some excellent leisure centres across the Vale, and everyone is really thrilled to bits that there's a new report coming up this week about Parkwood, extension to the current contract, and everything about it is looking good. And I'm sure with our street scene work that's going ahead, everyone will see a great improvement across the Vale. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any committee members who want to ask any questions or comment at this stage? I don't see any hands, in which case we'll go back into the next part of the presentation. I'm not sure who's actually joining us to make this bit of the presentation. Is it Colin? Ah, it's Marcus. Oh, Marcus, you got a heavy load this evening after that report earlier on. Thank you very much for being with us again. Over to you, Marcus.
You muted, Marcus, or there's no audio? I don't know if you're muted or there's no audio. Try it now. Did you connect and disconnect your headphones, your earbuds? If you did, that might be causing the problem. You might have to leave and rejoin, Marcus. Sorry, Chair, we're just having a technical issue there. We'll sort that out if you bear with us. Hi, Marcus. I can see you've rejoined. If you can try again, please. Hey, but just test your audio now, Marcus. If you can try again, Marcus. Right, still not getting any sound. I think you might need to completely leave the meeting and rejoin. I think that might bring the audio back if you can just do that. Bear with us, committee. Apologies for this. Hi, Marcus. I can see you rejoined now. Can you just try again, please? Right, Marcus, can see you speaking, but there's no sound coming through. It might be something's happened with the headphones. I don't know. If you can rejoin either with or without the headphones, just leave the meeting completely and rejoin and try and see if that will rectify it with the audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, can now. Yeah, that's great, Marcus. We'll put the slides back on now. Hi, Marcus.
Thank you, Mark. You can hear me now. Can you? That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, Marcus. Yeah, we can.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll really quickly fly through these. Apologies for the issues there. The place director has set a number of key priorities for the next year, focusing on those 11 issues there: placemaking and town development, the replacement local development plan, barrier regeneration programs, affordable housing delivery, community funding and support, economic growth and economic growth sites, biodiversity and green infrastructure, the local area energy plan, local food supply chains, community asset transfers, and reshaping priorities. Move on to the next slide, please, Mark. Thank you. The next section deals with our managing our resources and key budgetary and reshaping information, and includes our estimated base budget of just over 3.16 million. Can everyone still hear me? Because the screen has frozen my side.
Yeah, we can still hear you. Your audio's still coming through, okay. Marcus.
Great, thank you. We have reshaping and efficiency savings and income targets and other items detailed, which are set out below. I won't go through those in detail because we're trying to get through this report. We have key engagement activity for the year ahead, including the local development plan, some of the placemaking work which will continue, and plan for neighbourhoods alongside the Barry project management engagement on major projects. Other partnership work is detailed in the plan. Relevant risks include the major regeneration projects risk, which remains scored medium-high, loss of funding streams which could affect planning, regeneration and countryside and community schemes. That risk is probably less of an issue at the moment, but could be an issue going forward into the years to come. We have a resource competition risk around statutory services, the failure to manage the collaboration agenda, recruitment challenges in planning and regeneration roles remain difficult. Any economic downturn affecting the ability to deliver projects around things like investment, but also inflation. Uncertainty in long-term Welsh Government and UK Government funding for regeneration and levelling up. And finally, a reduction in Section 106 planning obligation funding because we are seeing viability issues pushing developers. Next slide, please. What I'll try to do here is just refer to the main headlines. So there are four, this section 4 sets out the key actions we're going to be including, and milestone and outcomes. These are around key areas such as placemaking and town development, which Trevor referred to in his slide. The replacement local development plan, key regeneration projects in Barry. Next slide, please. Major economic growth sites, which are detailed below, securing affordable housing through our policies in the local development plan, community grants and local support through other funding sources. Next slide, please. A focus on UK government funding programmes, which are detailed below. Also net zero and climate change policies, which are set out in both the local development plan and in some of the work we've done around the local area energy plan. Biodiversity and green infrastructure, largely linked to our work with the replacement local development plan, and of course the local area energy plan itself. And next slide, please. And then the section around what we will continue to do focuses on food strategy and rural sustainability. Also skills and business development, working with our partners in Cardiff Capital Region. Service transformation and income generation is a reshaping programme and will focus on areas including Porthkerry and Cosmeston, and maximising some of the funding we receive to support placemaking and street scene activities. And finally, looking and supporting community asset transfers. In terms of performance measures, I've tried to do a plan on a page so we don't dwell too long on this. You'll see that there are a number of key targets affecting town centres and the economy, as well as empty properties and housing delivery, planning performance, building control performance, tourism, and environment and green space. And these are all set out in the plan. So rather than go through them individually, if any member has any queries about those, I'm happy to answer questions. And that's it. So thank you very much for listening, and apologies for the slight confusion at the start.
Thank you very much, Marcus, for taking us through that. And again, are there any Cabinet members who want to add anything to that part of the presentation? No? Okay. Any questions from any non-committee members? Committee members? Councillor Ernest, please.
Yes, Chairman. Can I thank Marcus for a very good report? Actually did a printout of it, so I was able to follow it very well, despite the late hour. Can I just ask you, Marcus, about major project consultations, particularly the Wilko site in Thompson Street and the Western and Eastern Gateway? Active travel, I think I know a bit about. I don't know much about the Wilko site other than we bought an expensive building. And what about the Western Eastern Gateways? Because I think they are very important. The actual approaches to the Vale are very, very poor, and maybe there's something you're looking to spruce up as part of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Marcus, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Ernest. The Wilko store, as you may be aware, was purchased by the council after being vacant for quite some years. Sadly, the Wilko group collapsed, and the company that owned the building attempted to market it and didn't have much success. We've purchased that building, and we're currently going through a consultation process with both residents, businesses, and users of the town centre to look at what future uses it could be put to. We have already identified some really good meanwhile uses, which we'll be developing over the next few months. Specifically at this stage, we are going through the process of ensuring the building itself is suitable for future uses, including work around its electrics and lifts and other items. But while that goes on, we are going through the process of looking what would benefit the town. That includes uses such as a possible indoor market, or certainly using part of the building for an indoor market, and also meanwhile uses based around other parts of the unit. There are 2 floors to it, and we're working with colleagues in both education and other parts of the council to ensure that the building is brought back into a really good use for the town and supports the development of Holton Road as well. You mentioned the Eastern Western Gateways. Just to highlight, those are Eastern and Western Gateways to Barry and in fact essentially to Holton Road rather than the Vale itself. The Western Gateway site is the site which is partly a vacant site by the Gladstone Bridge, and partly a clinic which is not in a great condition. And those 2 sites are actually linked together to form the Western Gateway. And we're looking to develop a scheme which includes both a new health centre, residential accommodation, and possibly some facilities to support our social services colleagues in their work in the community. And that scheme has been developed jointly with the Health Board and with Welsh Government. It's been quite a long time in the making, sadly, partly to do when you work with partners, some of their requirements change and we have to amend the schemes. But that one is coming much closer to development than it has been in the past. And then the Eastern Gateway is a new site which has only recently emerged, and you'll probably be aware which site this is. This is the site behind the railway station. It used to be the old BT depot, I think, in its past life, behind the docks office. And And we are looking again to develop a mixed-use site there, which will possibly include residential uses, but some other uses as well. That's at very early stage at the moment. We've managed to purchase part of the site with Welsh Government funding. It does currently include some active travel proposal in respect of the land, the rear of the station, and that's what is currently identified for a park and ride. And we will be building that into a scheme as we move forward this year. But that one's a bit less fully formed than the other two.
Yeah, thank you very much then. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Champion, please.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if a Metro X2 gives it extra wheels and makes it go faster. That's slightly tongue-in-cheek, but you can answer that. The working with the Regional Health Board, I've been talking about St Athan, that was in the regional or the local development plan, and suggesting that the pool surgery that's existing in a bungalow that should be relocated. And I've been told, oh, well, that's down to the health board. And so if you could talk to the health board about that, that would be really good, and work together on that one as well. And what is the sort of the local heating or the regional heating you mentioned? Where's that?
Thank you, Councillor. Marcus, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the first item about the X2 is actually Trevor's, but I think it was a bit tongue-in-cheek anyway, so I won't come back on that one. In respect of our work with the health board, obviously the local development plan is proposing new sites around St Athan. We have been engaging with them as part of the local development plan process. Obviously, they have their own plans for either renewal or redevelopment of surgeries. We do try to work with them. That work is through the development plan process, and also when they come forward with the new sites. But unfortunately, a lot of that work has to come from them rather than us, although we do engage with them when they are looking for new sites. So, for example, we have had some discussions with them around Lantern Major and potentials for new sites for a clinic in Lantern Major. And we will continue to work with them around that. And we are due to meet with them again around the LDP in the next month. And I'm quite happy to raise that with them. But unfortunately, we don't have much control over what they do. It is down to them. And then your final question, apologies, Councillor Champion. I'm sorry.
Local heating.
Yeah, so the local, is that in respect of the local area energy plan you're talking about?
Yes, maybe it was. I can't remember what you said.
So we are commissioning some research through the local area energy plan, which is actually funded via Cardiff Capital Region around a local heating policy and local heat networks. And this will look at what potential there is in the Vale of Morgan for developing local heat networks. That is at its very early stages and will be taken forward this year. That will come out with some recommendations, and we don't really know what they are yet. They could be that there is low potential, but it could obviously be that there is a greater potential for that. And they will look at some of our employment sites where heat is generated and how close they are to residential sites and how easy it would be to develop things like local heat network. So that's a piece of work we're hoping we'll report back on in the next 12 months.
Be interested. And just the X2 was slightly tongue-in-cheek, but just by, and this is probably for Trevor and not for you then, just by giving a bus a different name, I don't see the point in it really. It doesn't make the service any better. So I know it ties in with your metro in Cardiff, Marcus, but yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Marcus. I don't think there was a question there. I think it was a comment. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Champion. No, you've not come back in. Okay. I just had one question, if I may. The Directorate Place plan says there'll be a focus on income generation at country parks. And my question is just how will you ensure that aligns with the learning from the Aqua Park pilot in Cosmoston? So will the same type of proactive approach to be taken in terms of ecological surveys, etc. Thanks, Marcus.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And it will, although some of that development work will be around some of the existing facilities that are there. So you'll be aware that there is obviously an existing cafe building in both of the country parks. Excellent news that the Big Fresh food company is taking over, or has taken over the cafe in Cosmeston, and they are spending some money in redeveloping that cafe internally and making it a lot more pleasant experience. And that is the sort of work really we're talking about here, alongside possibly looking at the cafe in Portkerry as well, and how we can improve the facilities that are there. It also includes the work that we've already undertaken in improving the facilities in both of the country parks, like the toilet facilities as well, exploring what grants are available to help support that. Often when we do seek some of this grant support, there is a contribution requirement that the council has to put in. So in the current schemes that have happened in both Portkerry and Cosmeston, those have varied, but are around about 30% of the value has to come from, at least 30% has to come from the council to support the redevelopment. So when we look at these reshaping and income opportunities, it's probably that type of opportunity that we're specifically looking at, albeit that there will be these longer term opportunities, such as use of the water and such as use of the parks and facilities such as licensed operators in selling items in the parks and what have you, and food items. Those are a little bit, it's maximising our income opportunity while having the minimum impact on the park itself. I think that's a fair thing to say.
Thank you, Marcus. I spend a lot of time walking through our country parks, and was in Portkerry recently, and I'm just going to say it's fabulous to see the investment there, both in terms of planting and in terms of improved facilities for visitors. I met a couple of people who were parking in the first car park and had never been there before, and said, you know, where should we head? Which direction should we go? And it was great just to welcome them and then see how much they were enjoying the park. So thanks to everybody who's been working so hard to make that happen. Okay, I don't see any other hands up, so I will take us to the recommendation. I am just going to propose a clarification to the recommendation, officers. So the recommendation before us is that the Scrutiny Committee endorses the Place and Environment and Housing Services Directorate plans and associated measures and performance targets for 26-27 contained within them, and refer their endorsement and any views to Cabinet for their consideration and endorsement of the plan. The only amendment I'm going to suggest is that we would endorse the plans within the scope of that which is relevant to this committee, because obviously there are elements, particularly within the Environment and Housing Services Directorate plan, that relate more directly to other scrutiny committees. So do you want me to repeat that amendment? Just that we add into that recommendation that are within the scope of the Place Committee.
Yeah, that's noted, Chair.
Lovely,
yeah.
Thank you. So I move that recommendation. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Inucci Williams. Thank you very much, Trevor and Marcus, for joining us tonight and taking us through that. That was really helpful. And we move on then to the final agenda item 6, which is the Highway Maintenance 3-year plan for 2026-29. This is a reference from Cabinet, and just to make clear for committee that the report will be approved unless scrutiny makes any recommendations which affect the plan. I know Trevor's still with us. I think we're also joined by Nathan Thomas, the neighbourhood manager, and Colin Smith, the head of neighbourhood services. I'm really sorry that you've had to wait so long to get to this agenda item. I'm afraid it's the nature of this committee that we have items before us that just require a lot of consideration. So thank you for your patience. I'm not sure who's taking us through this. Nathan, hello, welcome. Over to you. You're on. We can't hear you, Nathan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hope you can hear me now. Fantastic. You'll all be pleased to know I've only prepared a couple of slides, and I'll run through those very briefly. Mark, if you could share the screen, please.
Yeah, my colleague's bringing them up now, Nathan.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so the Cabinet report for the 3-year plan, 2026 to 2029. It covers our priority sites for carriageway resurfacing, surface dressing, thin surfacing, footway improvements. Next slide, please. Okay, introduction. So the Council has a statutory duty to maintain the highway public expense under Section 41 of the Highways Act 1980. The Highway Maintenance 3-year plan 26-29 provides the foundation for delivering a well-maintained and managed highway essential to the Vale of Glamorgan's economic, social and transport needs. It is important to note that the adopted highway network is the Council's most valuable asset. The proposed plan attached to Appendix A of this report, with priority roads identified by the Council's highway engineers as requiring treatment. All roads listed within the plan for resurfacing have been assessed within the last 18 months in accordance with the carriageway resurfacing prioritisation scoring system, which was amended back in September 2023 to capture the increased popularity of active travel. Surface dressing is a well-developed preventative treatment determined by an engineer's assessment only. These locations listed are shown as Appendix A/2. This treatment is not suitable for built-up areas such as those residential, tight, low-speed turn circles like your cul-de-sacs. It's not necessarily a product that we would want to use in that type of location. Micro-asphalt, preventative treatment. They generate, going to move away from that preservation type of works, but we have got an alternative product, which is now this thin surfacing. Providing sufficient budget allocation is available, roads scoring a total of 210 points and above, the plan will be resurfaced until funds are fully committed per financial year. The roads listed within Appendix A/1 that do not receive works this year will be planned for completion in the next financial year, subject to the adequate funding being made available. Those roads listed with no scores against them have been added to the plan following on from stakeholder referrals and will be reviewed once assessed, scored appropriately and therefore prioritised accordingly on the list. I think it's important that we capture those suggested sites, whether they've scored low or high. It's important that we capture it just for transparency. It is important to note that the condition of any part of the adopted highway network that requires immediate attention, then it is suggested within the Cabinet report that the Director of Environment and Housing be granted delegated powers in consultation with the Cabinet member for Neighbourhood and Building Services to amend the list as appropriate. Next slide, please. So this is just our scoring matrix. So this was changed back in September 2023 after a recommendation from Councillor Hooper. And it basically, it was a recommendation to suggest that we change the matrix to incorporate the increased popularity of active travel. It's important to note that we made those changes and the matrix has been used ever since. Next slide, please. I've put a couple of glossy photos in here. If you're a boring engineer like me, I like these type of photos, so I hope you do too. Bit of background, the highway maintenance team are responsible for 2,590 unique street reference numbers across the whole of the Vale. Not all of these locations will be listed in the 3-year plan, only those suggested for works. Assessments take place throughout the year at each quarter. When collating a plan, a cut-off point was needed to submit this report to Cabinet. Therefore, we currently have 31 sites which are yet to be assessed as of today, demonstrating that this list is ever evolving. The next phase of assessment are booked in for June 2026. Local government borrowing initiative has allowed the team to complete 49 sites this financial year. And I just want to clarify there is a correction on this last bullet point. That it should read, after financial year 26-27, LGBI monies will not be made available and significant investment is needed to maintain an aging asset. Next slide, please. So these are just two photos. This is Gladstone Road in Barry. This is our traditional carriageway resurfacing. and this method removes the existing surface course and the lower binder layers, only in some instances where there's heavy rutting, and it replaces this with new material. This is by far the most expensive option that we have available to us. However, a recent tender exercise, as we've procured through our partners in Ardell at Cardiff Council, ensures that we do have competitive rates. Next slide, please. This is surface dressing. So this is a cold applied treatment. This is a cost-effective treatment that seals up the existing surface course to prevent water ingress, and it gives instant texture. It generally involves a thorough cleanse of the existing highway, the adopted highway network, cold applied bitumen emulsion, aggregates applied, and then the top coat of aggregate is then sealed with another coat of bitumen. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It is far cheaper than carriageway resurfacing. Public perception is that they want to see a newly resurfaced road, as do I. But unfortunately, our budget isn't always. We have to work within the budgets that are given to us. Okay, next slide, please. This is the thin surfacing, which is in replacement of microasphalt. Sorry. This is a specialist product provided by our term maintenance contractor that offers a cost-effective alternative to microasphalt without the complaints. This product has been in trial in Stockport, up in England since 2014. Our neighbouring authority, Cardiff Council, have been trialling this product for the last couple of years. We've successfully run a trial in a couple of locations of Penarth and this location here, 7 Avenue in Barry. It's a fantastic product. And I think in comparison to microasphalt, which does generate a lot of complaints for the highway maintenance team to deal with, this is certainly the way forward for us as a team, a small team. Next slide, please. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Great to see the pictures as well, examples of the really good work that's being done. Councillor, before I bring you in, Councillor Champion, can I just ask whether the Cabinet member wants to add anything before we move on to any questions? You don't have to, but if you want to, you're very welcome to. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much, Nathan, for that presentation. Yes, I'm always impressed by the new treatments that we're doing. I know we piloted the treatment fairly recently in Barry, and I went to it, and I saw you there, and I saw the team working on these treatments, and I think they're very interesting. And I think working in partnership with the local university in particular and other universities is really important going forward on this. I'm also impressed that we've actually doubled the amount of money we're going to spend on footways as well, from over to £400,000 for the next 2 years. This is really, really good. And I think, it's not just carriageways that we do, but footways as well, because we want to increase accessibility to certain areas, and we want to encourage people to walk around and to use that to travel. And I think this is very important. And also, if any member, I would like to add this, has got any road that they think needs to be done in terms of road servicing, then please let us know. I think that's important. But we've got a very scientific method of assessing those roads, including scanning by machine, but also visual inspections, as well as obviously checking on complaints or anything concerns that people have, and what type of road is it. If it's a road that obviously uses lots of throughput, but also roads that access to public transport like bus routes as well, because often they are prioritised. And as Nathan rightly said, we've got a very good, I think it's quite scientific scoring system. But obviously, I'm always lobbying for more money. We'd always like more money in our services. We were given for this year and for last year lots of money by Welsh Government, and that's really helped us. But obviously, we're looking for more. And also, we're obviously looking out for any new ways of resurfacing as well. This is not the end of the game. We're always looking for that, and we're also looking for new technology. And just to hasten to add, I think the last year we've filled in 27,000 potholes, and I know Nathan's team is working really hard recently on that. And I also like to thank him and the team for doing that sterling work.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Member. Councillor Champion, please.
Yes, thank you, Nathan, for all your. Can you thank your team, please, for all the hard work they do? One thing, North Road in Cowbridge, and I know it's well, it's not on the list. It's not an A road. Doesn't have that many cars on it. Very minor road. So it has had a couple of potholes filled in, but there's always potholes there, and there's so many people have been digging this up. It's a right mess. And the other thing is, the pothole problem was a panorama program all about potholes and about a way of dealing with them in a different manner. And I did ask the chief exec if he had actually or talked to your team about it, and that your team were going to get back to me. But it's something I think is half an hour. Maybe you could view it if you haven't. It was 8 months ago, BBC Panorama pothole problem. That was all from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not sure there's anything for you to answer there, Nathan. Just a plea that councillors, if you've got any roads in your wards that you're particularly concerned about, if you could use the channels that Councillor Wilson has mentioned to raise those concerns. I know officers will look at it. So thank you for that. Councillor Franks, please.
Thank you. I'd like to express my gratitude to Nathan and the Highways team for dealing with a problem that we're all aware of, and I would say the team does not have adequate resources to cope with the situation. So my comments relate to the inadequate budget that is allocated. I would just remind committee that last autumn, suddenly programmed works were stopped. The signs were erected warning people of disruption. Letters were sent to residents, and there was a general acknowledgement that the work was going to be done. And then at the very last moment, it was all stopped because the money had run out. Now, previously, I think at the last council, I asked for some sort of commitment from the political leadership, whether this situation would be repeated this year, and I think I was just laughed at. But that's okay. I really do think that residents are outraged at the state of Vale highways. The amount and depth and danger of some road conditions is dreadful. The situation just is intolerable as far as residents are concerned, and I think I've got to say that the Vale of Glamorgan roads are some of the worst in the whole of the country. So I suggest that committee recommends to Cabinet that adequate resources are allocated to allow Nathan and his team to do their job to an even higher standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nathan. I'm not going to ask you to respond to any of that, because that's clearly not appropriate for you to be doing that as an officer. I'm just wondering whether or not the Cabinet member wants to come back in on any of that. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Franks, on your points. Obviously, I would like to spend more money on resurfacing, yet we know we got budgets. We've had an increase in the council tax, as we know. We've obviously got funding, that we use for various areas, including education services. But I'm not going to go through that debate again. We had that at full council. My real concern is obviously making sure that going forward that we use our money wisely. That in many ways, Nathan is very good at what he does. because what he does, he allocates, doesn't do necessarily the whole road, he does part of the road. That's what he needs doing, and that's how we use the money properly. As for the question mark, whether the worst or the best, who knows? I don't know that one way or the other. But it's obviously might be some data we could look at, and I'm quite happy to look at that. But as I will repeat that, you know, obviously we need to move forward on this, and that's concluding my comments.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see any other hands. So Nathan, Councillor Perry, just at the last minute, in you come.
Yeah, sorry. I've been busy, you know, just remembering all the emails I've sent to Nathan the last day or two. So Nathan knows the roads in my ward very well, stone by stone. Just to raise something else, which is probably the same across the whole rural Vale, is that we have lanes with passing spaces, and some of the passing spaces have evolved over time, and it's been a long time since they've been resurfaced, or perhaps they weren't resurfaced at all with bitumen. And so if you have got a car coming in the other direction, particularly at night and when it's wet, you move over to the side of the road and you are disappearing down holes that are far deeper than any pothole that people complain about in the urban areas, which is damaging vehicles. And I'm wondering if we can actually extend, and it is a adopted highway, the surfacing of roads, and it has actually occurred because I went searching for it. There's one near Walterston or Marcross, one down there. One has been done, but all the rest, if you've got a car approaching the other side and you pull over to the side into the passing area, because it's not been surfaced at all, apart from the one, you can disappear down a hole, and they can be quite deep, particularly if you pulled over at a speed above 3 miles an hour. I'm just wondering if Nathan could comment on that for me.
Okay, so as I understand it, the issue is where there are natural, it's a bit like, you know, there's a green space and members of the public choose their own path across it and it creates a path. So that's the issue with parking spaces. Nathan, what's our position on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Perry. Ian is right. There's lots of these informal passing places that have been naturally created over time. And they generally would have been grass verges, which form part of the adopted highway, but they're not part of the metalled surface. They're not part of the asphalt section of carriageway. Generally, we'll tend to trim those up. So we might use an unbound material to sort of trim up any deep ruts or depressions. But ultimately, there is no formation there. So I wouldn't necessarily want to be inclined to resurface them because there's no formation there, so it's not going to last. I think if you're aware of any of these locations, if you could let me know, that'd be fantastic. Likewise, I'll raise it with the highway inspectors to keep a little eye out for those. And we can trim them up by all means, because I think from a safety perspective, if cars do choose to come off the highway and go onto those passing places, then they need to be able to safely pull off those passing places. So yeah, I'm more than happy to look at those, but not necessarily resurface them.
Thank you. Thanks, Nathan. I think, does that answer your question, Councillor Perry? Sounds good.
I'll send a list across to you next week. Again. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, committee. I don't see any other hands. So many thanks, Nathan, for taking us through that. So I'll bring us back to the recommendations. Just to remind committee that the recommendation before us is that the plan as proposed will be approved if we don't have any recommendations to go back to Cabinet that would substantially alter it. We don't. Therefore, the plan is approved, and I just move that we note the report. And can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Iannucci-Williams, thank you very much. Councillors, that concludes our business this evening. So all I'm left to do is remind everyone that our next extraordinary meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 1st of April at 6 o'clock. Thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you then. Good night.